Patience is a virtue, especially for those blessed by the moon goddess. That's what Amparo Davila's grandmother told her every night before bed. But Amparo would learn that patience means nothing when your own mate looks at you with disgust, when the pack treats you like a curse, and when the man destined to love you demands you prove your worth like some common liar. Because in a world where your wolf defines your value, being unable to shift doesn't make you patient, it makes you prey. Chapter 1. The Wolfless Shame. The spring equinox festival should have been magical. Amparo Davila stood at the edge of the Clearwater Pack's ceremonial grounds, watching wolves of every color dance under the full moon. Browns and grays and blacks, all magnificent, all whole. Their howls pierced the night sky, a symphony of belonging she'd never be part of. 23 years old, and still no wolf. Still lurking in the shadows, I see. The voice was silk wrapped around venom. Amparo didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Maricela Kidd, the pack's golden child. With her stunning silver wolf and her perfect shifting ability that manifested at 13 2 years earlier than normal. Everything about Maricela screamed chosen. Everything about Amparo whispered broken. I'm not lurking, Amparo said quietly, keeping her eyes on the celebration. I'm just watching. Watching what you'll never have? Maricela stepped closer, her expensive perfume mixing with the scent of pine and earth. How charitable of the Alpha to even let you attend. Most packs would have exiled a wolfless burden years ago. The words stung because they were true. Alpha Dante Higgins had indeed been charitable, or perhaps he simply pitied her too much to cast her out. Amparo was the orphaned granddaughter of the pack's most revered healer. After all, legacy offered some protection. Even if ability didn't. At least I'm useful, Amparo replied, finally meeting Maricela's ice-blue eyes. The infirmary needs me. Who else is going to treat the pack's wounded? Certainly not someone whose only talent is looking pretty while shifted. Maricela's expression darkened. Careful, Amparo. That sharp tongue of yours is the only weapon you have. And tongues can be cut out. Before Amparo could respond, a howl cut through the night, different from the celebration howls. This one was commanding, powerful, resonant with authority that made every wolf present fall silent and turn toward the forest line. The Alpha emerged first, his massive dark brown wolf leading the way. Behind him came the hunting party, and at its center, Amparo's heart stopped. The wolf was enormous, easily twice the size of any wolf she'd ever seen. His fur was the color of midnight, so black it seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. Golden eyes swept across the gathered pack with an intensity that made seasoned warriors lower their heads in respect. But it wasn't his size or coloring that made Amparo's breath catch. It was the pull, like a rope tied around her ribs, yanking her forward. Like gravity had shifted and this stranger was the new center of the world. Like every cell in her body suddenly woke up and screamed him. 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 No, she whispered. The massive black wolf shifted, the transformation seamless and breathtaking. Where the wolf had stood, now stood a man tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and black hair that fell just past his collar. He wore the leather riding clothes of a traveling warrior, and even in human form, those golden eyes held the same predatory intelligence. Clearwater Pack, Alpha Dante's voice boomed, as he too shifted back to human form. I present Gregory Conrad, Alpha of the Shadowmere Pack, here to discuss the Alliance Treaty. Gregory Conrad. Even his name sounded powerful. And then those golden eyes found her across the crowd, and Amparo knew with the certainty of the mate bond that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. His nostrils flared. She watched his entire body go rigid, watched recognition flash across his face. The mate bond snapped into place like a physical thing, and for one perfect moment Amparo felt hope. Then his expression changed. Confusion first, then shock, then something worse, something that made her stomach drop like a stone. Disappointment. Gregory Conrad's eyes raked over her. From her plain homespun dress to her untamed dark curls, to her too thin frame that came from years of being last to eat, lowest priority, barely tolerated. She watched him take in every detail that marked her as lesser, as other, as wrong. Alpha Dante. Gregory's voice was deep and cold. We should discuss the treaty. Privately. He turned his back on her, on his mate, and walked toward the Alpha's lodge without a second glance. The rope around Amparo's ribs pulled tighter, almost painful now. The mate bond didn't care about disappointment or shame. It only knew, mine, mine, mine. Did you see that? Maricella's delighted voice cut through Amparo's shock. The Shadowmere Alpha looked at you like you were dirt on his shoe. I guess even the mate bond has standards. Laughter rippled through the nearby pack members. Not cruel laughter that would require them to see her as a threat. This was worse. This was pity. Amparo's grandmother had told her stories about the mate bond. How it was sacred, bestowed by the moon goddess herself. How your mate would see your soul, not your surface. How true mates were meant to complete each other, two halves of one whole. Her grandmother had never mentioned what happened when your mate took one look at you and walked away. Amparo. She turned to find Bonita Mejia, the pack's head healer and her mentor, watching her with sad, knowing eyes. Come, Bonita said gently. Let's get you home. He didn't even. Amparo's voice cracked. He didn't say anything. I know, child. Bonita wrapped an arm around her shoulders, guiding her away from the festival grounds. But you need to understand something. Gregory Conrad is one of the most powerful alphas in the Western Territories. His pack is legendary. Warriors. All of them. What does that have to do with everything? Bonita's voice was soft but firm. A pack like Shadowmere needs a strong Luna. Someone who can fight, who can lead, who can produce powerful heirs. You're a healer, Amparo, and a gifted one. But you're also wolfless, Amparo finished bitterly. They reached the small cottage on the edge of Packlands, the healer's house where Amparo had lived since her grandmother's death 5 years ago. It was humble but comfortable, filled with dried herbs and medical texts and the lingering scent of sage. Amparo sank onto the worn couch, the mate bond thrumming painfully in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to go to him, to make him understand, to force him to see her. But she'd spent 23 years being invisible. Why should tonight be any different? There are stories, Bonita said carefully, settling into the chair across from her. Old stories, from before even your grandmother's time. About wolves who don't shift until— Don't. Amparo held up a hand. Please don't give me hope. Every test, every ritual, every moon ceremony has come up empty. I'm wolfless, Bonita. That's not going to change because some alpha happens to be my mate. Happen to be? Bonita raised an eyebrow. The mate bond doesn't just happen, child. The moon goddess. The moon goddess has a cruel sense of humor then. Amparo stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Through the trees, she could still see the festival lights, could still feel him out there, a constant awareness, at the edge of her consciousness, pairing a powerful alpha with a defective omega. What's next? Should I just present myself to him so he can reject me officially, and we can both move on? Amparo. It's fine. She wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. I've been rejected by this pack my whole life. What's one more rejection? But even as she said it, Amparo knew it was a lie. The pack's rejection had hardened her, built walls around her heart that nothing could breach. This was different. This was the one person in the entire world who was supposed to accept her unconditionally, and he'd looked at her like she was a mistake. Through the window, she watched a figure emerge from the Alpha's lodge. Even at this distance, she recognized Gregory Conrad's powerful form. He stood in the moonlight, head tilted back, and she could have sworn he was looking directly at her cottage. The mate bond pulled. Amparo turned away. I'm going to bed, she announced. Tomorrow I'll go back to the infirmary, back to healing people who can barely stand to look at me, and Gregory Conrad will sign his treaty and leave. And that will be that. And if it's not? Bonita asked quietly. If he comes looking for you. Amparo laughed, the sound hollow. Then I'll ask him to do me a favor and reject me quickly. Because hope is more painful than rejection ever could be. She climbed the narrow stairs to her small bedroom, every step making the mate bond protest. Her wolf, if she even had one, was notably silent. It had always been silent. Amparo lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling Gregory Conrad's presence like a beacon in the darkness. Tomorrow, she decided, she would visit the Alpha and request permission to leave Packlands during the treaty negotiations. She could travel to the Eastern Territories, help with their recent outbreak of silver fever. Anything to get away from those golden eyes and the disappointment in them. Anything to escape the cruelest trick the moon goddess had ever played. Outside, a wolf howled low and mournful, and achingly familiar, even though she'd only heard it once. The mate bond thrummed in response, and Amparo pressed a hand to her chest, willing it to be quiet. "Patience is a virtue," she whispered to the darkness, her grandmother's words tasting like ash in her mouth. But patience, she was learning, was just another word for suffering slowly. Chapter 2. 3 months to prove the impossible. Morning came too quickly and too cruelly. Amparo woke to find the mate bond had intensified overnight, a constant, aching awareness of Gregory Conrad's location. He was still at the Alpha's lodge, barely a quarter-mile away, and every cell in her body knew exactly where he was at any given moment. It was maddening. She dressed in her usual work clothes, a simple green dress that had seen better days, sturdy boots, her healer's satchel slung across her body. The infirmary would be busy today. Festival nights always resulted in injuries. Sprained ankles from overzealous dancing, cuts from playful sparring that got too rough, hangovers that warriors swore were actual illnesses. Normal problems, manageable problems, not like the impossible problem of a mate who couldn't bear to look at her. Bonita was already gone when Amparo came downstairs, probably called to the Alpha's lodge for some early morning consultation. The older healer served as both medical advisor and occasional counselor to Alpha Dante, a position that required political delicacy Amparo had never quite mastered. She grabbed a piece of bread and an apple, eating quickly as she headed toward the infirmary. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the lingering traces of last night's bonfire. Pack members were already up and moving, warriors heading to training grounds, mothers herding children toward the schoolhouse, elders gathering for their morning council. "Amparo," a young voice called out. She turned to see Luz Hull, one of the pack's teenage wolves, limping toward her. The girl's right ankle was swollen, already turning purple. "Let me guess," Amparo said, crouching to examine the injury. "You tried to jump the bonfire?" Luz had the grace to look embarrassed. "Camille dared me, and I almost made it." "Almost doesn't count when you're injured." Amparo gently probed the ankle, feeling for broken bones. "Sprained, not fractured. Thank the goddess for small mercies. Come on. Let's get you to the infirmary." She helped Luz hobble down the path, supporting the girl's weight. The infirmary was a long, low building near the center of Pack lands, well stocked with both modern medical supplies and traditional herbal remedies. Amparo's grandmother had run it for 40 years before her death, and Bonita had maintained her predecessor's exacting standards. Amparo settled Luz on an examination table and went to gather supplies: comfrey poultice for the swelling, willow bark tea for the pain, bandages for compression. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, the familiar routine calming her jangled nerves. "Is it true?" Luz asked suddenly. Amparo didn't look up from grinding the comfrey. "Is what true? That the Shadowmere Alpha is your mate?" Her hands stilled. "News travels fast. Everyone's talking about it." Luz's voice was careful, too careful. "They say he walked away from you, that he didn't even speak to you. They say correctly." Amparo resumed grinding, putting more force into it than necessary. "Now hold still while I wrap this ankle." She applied the poultice with gentle hands, then wrapped the joint firmly but not too tight. The work was meditative, requiring focus that left no room for thoughts of golden eyes and disappointed expressions. "My mom says you're cursed," Luz blurted out, then immediately looked horrified. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "It's fine. It wasn't fine. Your mother isn't wrong. 23 years old and still no wolf? That's not normal, Luz. That's not how it's supposed to work. But you're such a good healer. Which means nothing in a werewolf pack." Amparo finished the wrapping and stepped back. "Stay off that ankle for 3 days. No shifting, no running, no jumping over fires you have no business jumping over." "Amparo. Go home, Luz." The girl left, and Amparo was grateful for the silence. She cleaned up the supplies, organizing them back into their proper places, trying to lose herself in the routine. The door burst open. Amparo Davila. It wasn't a question. She turned slowly, already knowing who she'd find. Gregory Conrad filled the doorway, seeming even larger in the confined space of the infirmary. He wore different clothes today, dark pants, and a fitted shirt that emphasized his warrior's build. Those golden eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made her want to step back. She wouldn't. Alpha Conrad. Her voice was admirably steady. Can I help you with something? He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded very final. We need to talk. Do we? Amparo crossed her arms. You seemed quite content to ignore me last night. Something flickered across his face, regret, shame. It was gone too quickly to identify. Last night was complicated. She laughed, the sound sharp. That's one word for it. Gregory moved closer, and the mate bond surged in response. Amparo's traitorous body wanted to close the distance, to touch him, to breathe in his scent of cedar and lightning. She forced herself to stand still. I didn't expect a wolfless mate, he said bluntly. The words hit like a physical blow, even though she'd known that this was the problem. And I didn't expect a mate who'd look at me with disgust, she shot back. I suppose we're both disappointed. It's not disgust. Then what is it? She stepped toward him now, anger giving her courage. Shame? Regret? Did you spend all night figuring out how to reject me without causing a political incident? No. His jaw tightened. I spent all night trying to understand how the moon goddess could pair an alpha of my bloodline with someone who can't even shift. Well, when you figure it out, please enlighten me. I've been asking that question for 23 years. They stood barely 3 feet apart now, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his golden eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. The mate bond screamed at her to move closer, to touch, to claim. My pack needs a strong Luna, Gregory said, his voice low and rough. Someone who can fight beside me, lead in my absence, produce heirs who will continue our bloodline. Can you do any of those things? Each word was a knife, precise and cutting. No, Amparo said quietly. I can't fight because I have no wolf to train. I can't lead warriors because they'd never follow someone like me. And as for heirs. She swallowed hard. I don't even know if someone without a wolf can bear children who will shift. Exactly. So reject me. She lifted her chin, meeting his eyes directly. Do us both a favor and end this now. I've lived with rejection my entire life. Alpha Conrad, one more won't break me. But it would. She knew it would. Gregory stared at her for a long moment, something warring in his expression. Then he said the last thing she expected. No, I won't reject you. He stepped closer, crowding into her space. But I also won't claim you as my Luna until you prove yourself worthy of the position. Amparo's hands clenched into fists. Prove myself? How exactly am I supposed to do that without a wolf? That's your problem to solve. His voice was cold now, alpha authority bleeding through. The alliance treaty requires me to remain in Clearwater territory for 3 months. During that time, you will prove that you can be the Luna my pack needs. And if I can't, then at the end of 3 months, I'll reject you cleanly. You'll be free to find another mate, if the moon goddess grants you a second chance. The casual cruelty of it, as if he were offering her a gift instead of an impossible task, made her want to scream. How generous, she said instead. It's more than generous. Most alphas would have rejected you on sight. He turned toward the door, then paused. I'm not a monster, Amparo. I'm just a leader who has to put his pack first. If you can prove you're strong enough, capable enough, then perhaps we can make this work. But I won't saddle my pack with a weak Luna just because the mate bond tells me to. He left before she could respond, the door closing behind him with quiet finality. Amparo stood frozen, her mind reeling. Prove herself? Without a wolf? It was impossible. He knew it was impossible. This wasn't a chance, it was a slow, drawn-out rejection wrapped in the illusion of opportunity. The door opened again. Bonita entered, her expression grim. You heard, Amparo said flatly. The whole pack heard. Gregory Conrad doesn't exactly speak softly. Bonita set her bag down, studying Amparo with concerned eyes. What are you going to do? What choice do I have? Amparo sank onto one of the examination tables, suddenly exhausted. I can't prove I'm Luna material without a wolf. Even if I could hunt, fight, lead, none of it matters without the ability to shift. There might be another way. Don't. Amparo held up a hand. Please don't give me false hope, Bonita. I've had enough of that for one lifetime. Your grandmother told me something once, Bonita continued, as if Amparo hadn't spoken. About your bloodline. Your mother's side of the family. Amparo's mother had died in childbirth. Her father had followed shortly after, unable to bear the loss. She'd been raised by her grandmother, who'd always been suspiciously vague about Amparo's parents' history. What about it? She said your mother was special. That her wolf was different. Bonita chose her words carefully. She made me promise never to tell you unless it became necessary. Well, my mate demanding I prove my worth seems pretty necessary to me. Bonita moved to the infirmary's locked cabinet, the one that held the most valuable and dangerous remedies. She pulled out a small leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. This was your grandmother's. She kept records of everything, every patient, every treatment, every legend and story she deemed important. Bonita opened the journal, flipping to a page marked with a pressed white flower, including this. Amparo took the journal, reading her grandmother's familiar script. The white wolf bloodline is ancient, dating back to the first packs. They are born once in a generation, marked by silver eyes and fur the color of fresh snow. Their power is unmatched, their healing abilities legendary. But their wolves are late bloomers. Some don't shift until their 25th year, others until a great trauma forces the change. Amparo carries this blood. If her wolf doesn't come naturally, it will come when she needs it most. The moon goddess protects her chosen daughters. Amparo looked up, her hands trembling. White wolf? I've never even heard of, because they're rare. So rare that most people think they're just legends. Bonita's voice was urgent now. But your grandmother believed it absolutely. She said your mother had silver eyes before her first shift. Do you remember what color your mother's wolf was? I never saw her wolf. She died before I was born. But your grandmother saw, and she told me once, when she'd had too much wine at winter solstice, that your mother's wolf was white as starlight and twice as powerful. Hope dangerous, terrible hope bloomed in Amparo's chest. So you're saying my wolf is just late? I'm saying there's a chance. A real chance. Bonita gripped her shoulders. Gregory Conrad wants proof you can be his Luna? Show him. Train like you have a wolf, study pack leadership, learn everything you can about what a Luna does, and maybe, just maybe, when the time comes, your wolf will answer. And if it doesn't, then you'll have spent 3 months becoming the strongest version of yourself. With or without a wolf. Bonita smiled. That's not nothing, child. Amparo clutched the journal to her chest, reading and rereading her grandmother's words, a white wolf. It sounded like something from a fairy tale, too good to be true. But what choice did she have? She could give up now, accept the slow rejection, spend 3 months watching Gregory Conrad prepare to walk out of her life. Or she could fight. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll do it. That's my girl. Bonita squeezed her shoulders. Now, first things first, if you're going to prove yourself to an alpha, you need to start acting like a Luna. That means no more hiding on the edges of pack gatherings, no more accepting scraps at mealtimes, no more letting wolves like Maricela walk all over you. Easier said than done. Nothing worth doing is easy. Bonita pulled her toward the door. Come on. Alpha Dante is holding court this morning, and you're going to attend. Every pack member has the right to be present for pack business. And it's time you started exercising that right. Bonita, I can't just. You can and you will. The pack has treated you like you're invisible for too long. And you've let them. That ends today. They walked toward the Alpha's lodge. Amparo's heart pounding with each step. She could feel Gregory Conrad inside, that constant awareness of him both a comfort and a torment. The lodge's main hall was filled with pack members, warriors, elders, and ranking families all gathered for the morning session. Conversations stopped as Amparo entered with Bonita, dozens of eyes turning toward her. Alpha Dante sat in his carved wooden chair at the head of the hall, Gregory Conrad standing to his right. The Shadowmere Alpha's eyes found her immediately, something unreadable flickering across his face. Amparo, Alpha Dante said, surprise evident in his voice. This is unexpected. You rarely attend court. I'm a member of this pack, Amparo replied, keeping her voice steady. I have as much right to be here as anyone. Maricela, standing near the front with the other high-ranking wolves, laughed. Since when do you care about pack business? You've been content to hide in your infirmary for years. Since I realized that accepting invisibility is the same as accepting defeat. Amparo met Maricela's gaze directly. I'm done being invisible. A murmur ran through the crowd. Alpha Dante studied her with new interest, while Gregory Conrad's expression remained carefully neutral. Very well, Dante said. You're welcome to observe, as is any pack member. We're discussing the terms of the alliance treaty with Shadowmere Pack. For the next hour, Amparo stood and listened as they debated borders, trade routes, mutual defense agreements. She watched how Alpha Dante commanded respect without raising his voice, how he balanced competing interests, how he turned potential conflicts into compromises. She watched how Gregory Conrad negotiated sharp, intelligent, never backing down on matters of principle but flexible on details. A leader who put his pack's needs above his own ego. The kind of alpha who deserved a Luna worthy of standing beside him. The kind of alpha she'd have to prove herself to, or lose forever. When the session ended, Gregory caught her arm as she turned to leave. What are you doing? He asked quietly. What you demanded. She pulled her arm free, ignoring the electricity where his fingers had touched her. I'm proving I can be a Luna, starting with understanding what a Luna actually does. Amparo. 3 months, Alpha Conrad. That's what you gave me. I intend to use every day of them. She walked away before he could respond, her spine straight, her chin high. Inside, her heart was racing and her hands were shaking and every instinct screamed that this was impossible. But impossible was just another word for not yet accomplished. And Amparo Davila was done accepting defeat. Chapter 3. Blood, Sweat, and Borrowed Courage. The next morning, Amparo stood at the edge of the training grounds before dawn, watching warriors prepare for their daily drills. Steam rose from their bodies in the cool air, their movements fluid and powerful as they stretched and sparred. She'd never been allowed on the training grounds before. Wolfless pack members were considered liabilities unable to defend themselves, let alone contribute to the pack's martial strength. But if she was going to prove herself as Luna material, she needed to understand what warriors faced, what they valued, what made them follow a leader. You lost? A gruff voice asked. Ramon Nguyen, the pack's head warrior, approached with his arms crossed. He was built like a mountain solid, immovable, with scars that told stories of decades of battles. His brown eyes held no malice, just genuine confusion at her presence. No, Amparo said firmly. I'm here to train. Ramon blinked. Then he laughed a deep, booming sound that made several nearby warriors turn and stare. Train? Girl, you can't even shift. What exactly do you think you're going to train? Everything else. Amparo stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. I can learn hand-to-hand combat, weapons training, strategy. A Luna needs to understand warfare even if she can't shift into battle herself. A Luna needs to lead warriors into battle, Ramon corrected. And no warrior is going to follow someone who can't keep up. Then I'll learn to keep up. He studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're serious. Completely. Why? The question was genuine. You've avoided this place for 23 years. What changed? Why? Everything. Amparo thought. My mate looked at me like I was worthless, and I'm either going to prove him wrong or die trying. I'm tired of being weak, she said instead. Ramon considered this, then shrugged. Your funeral. But I'm not going easy on you, just because you're the healer. You want to train like a warrior. You'll be treated like one. I wouldn't expect anything less. Fine. Start with the obstacle course. 20 laps. Amparo looked at the course, a brutal series of walls to climb, ropes to swing from, trenches to cross. Warriors in their prime struggled to complete 5 laps. He wanted her to do 20. Now, Ramon added, his voice carrying alpha command even though he wasn't pack leadership. She started running. The first lap nearly killed her. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, and she fell twice, once into a mud pit, once from a rope she couldn't hold onto. Warriors paused their own training to watch, some laughing, others looking uncomfortable at her obvious struggle. By the 5th lap, she was covered in mud and blood from scraped palms. By the 10th, she was fairly certain she was going to vomit. By the 15th, She couldn't feel her legs anymore, but she kept going. Amparo. Stop. A familiar voice cut through her exhausted haze. She looked up to find Gregory Conrad standing at the edge of the course, his expression thunderous. Behind him stood Alpha Dante and several other high-ranking pack members, apparently drawn by the spectacle. "I'm not finished," she gasped out, dragging herself over another wall. "You're going to hurt yourself." "So?" She dropped to the other side, barely keeping her feet. "You wanted proof I could be strong enough. This is me trying to be strong enough. This isn't strength, it's suicide." Gregory moved to intercept her, but Ramon held up a hand. "She asked to train like a warrior," the head warrior said calmly. "I'm treating her like any other recruit. She's not a warrior, she's—" "What?" Amparo stopped, swaying on her feet. "A healer? Wolfless? Your disappointing mate? Say it. Alpha Conrad. What am I?" The training ground had gone completely silent. Every warrior, every onlooker, waited for his response. Gregory's jaw clenched. "You're someone who's going to collapse if you don't stop." "Noted." She turned and kept running, walking really, her body too exhausted for anything more. 18 more laps to go. She made it through lap 17 before her legs gave out completely. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood from a split lip. Her vision swam, and for a moment, she genuinely thought she might pass out. Strong hands lifted her. Gregory's scent surrounded her, cedar and lightning, and something uniquely him that made the mate bond sing despite her pain. "Let me go," she tried to say, but it came out as a wheeze. "No." His voice was rough, almost angry. "Ramon, get Bonita, now. I'm fine. You're bleeding, covered in mud, and you can barely breathe. You're not fine." He carried her toward the infirmary, his stride long and purposeful. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking," she said, each word an effort, "that Aluna needs to understand what her warriors endure, that if I'm going to lead them, I need to respect what they do. That strength comes in more forms than just shifting into a wolf." Gregory said nothing, but his arms tightened around her slightly. Bonita met them at the infirmary door, taking one look at Amparo and immediately going into healer mode. "Put her on the table," gently. Gregory laid her down, with surprising care, then stepped back as Bonita began examining her injuries. Nothing broken, thankfully, just severe muscle strain, dehydration, and various scrapes and bruises. "You're lucky," Bonita said, mixing a restorative tonic. "Another lap and you would have done serious damage. What possessed you to attempt 20 laps on the obstacle course?" Ramon said. "Ramon is a sadistic bastard who was testing to see if you'd quit." Bonita pressed the cup to Amparo's lips. "Drink. All of it." The tonic tasted vile but worked quickly, easing some of the worst muscle pain. Amparo became aware that Gregory was still there, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You can leave," she told him. "I'm sure you have important alpha business to attend to." "Why?" The question was quiet. "Why what? Why push yourself like this? You could have stopped at any point." Ramon would have understood. Would he? Amparo sat up slowly, ignoring Bonita's disapproving cluck. Or would he have dismissed me as weak, like everyone else in this pack does? So this is about pride? This is about proving I'm more than what everyone sees when they look at me. She met his golden eyes directly. "You included." Something flickered across his face. Was that shame? Regret? Before she could identify it, Maricela burst through the infirmary door. "Is it true?" The silver wolf beauty's eyes glittered with malicious delight. "Did you actually try to complete the warrior course?" "Oh, this is priceless. Playing warrior princess won't make you less wolfless, Amparo." "Get out." Gregory's voice was pure alpha command, making Maricela physically recoil. "I was just out." Now, Maricela fled, but not before shooting Amparo a look of pure venom. Silence settled over the infirmary. Bonita busied herself organizing supplies, giving them space while remaining close enough to monitor her patient. "You don't have to do this," Gregory said finally. "I can reject you now. Cleanly. You wouldn't have to suffer trying to meet impossible standards. Is that what you want?" Amparo's voice was steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "An easy out? I want." He trailed off, running a hand through his black hair. "I don't know what I want anymore. The mate bond tells me one thing. My duty to my pack tells me another. And you keep surprising me. How? Most wolves would have given up already. Would have accepted rejection rather than face this humiliation. He gestured at her, mud-covered, battered state. But you're still fighting, because giving up is the same as dying. Amparo swung her legs off the table, testing her weight. Everything hurt, but she could stand. I've spent my whole life being told I'm not enough. I'm not going to let you be the voice that finally makes me believe it. Gregory stared at her, and for a moment, Amparo could have sworn she saw respect in those golden eyes. 3 months, he said softly. You have 3 months to prove yourself. But I need you to understand something. I'm not trying to be cruel. I have 200 wolves depending on me. To choose a Luna who can protect them, lead them, bear heirs who will continue our bloodline. It's not about you being enough. It's about you being right for what the pack needs. And what if I can be both? She stepped closer to him, ignoring the way her body protested the movement. What if I can prove that strength isn't just about shifting, that a Luna can lead with intelligence, strategy, and determination instead of just claws and teeth? Then I would be honored to call you my Luna. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was enormous. But Amparo, you need to be realistic. The odds are against me. I know. She smiled, the expression sharp and determined. Good. I've never responded well to easy challenges. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. There and gone so quickly she almost missed it. Then he turned toward the door. Gregory, she called out, making him pause. It was the first time she'd used his given name. Thank you. For what? For not stopping me. For letting me fail on my own terms, instead of protecting me from the possibility. He looked back at her, something complicated in his expression. Don't thank me yet. The next 3 months are going to be harder than anything you've faced before. I certainly hope so, she replied. Otherwise, where's the fun in proving you wrong? This time his smile was real brief, but genuine. Then he was gone, leaving Amparo alone with Bonita, and the lingering scent of cedar and lightning. Well, Bonita said dryly, that was educational. Next time you decide to nearly kill yourself, perhaps give me advance notice so I can have the resurrection tonic prepared. There won't be a next time. Amparo limped toward the supply cabinet. Tomorrow I'm starting with 5 laps instead of 20. Work my way up gradually. Tomorrow you're resting those abused muscles. Tomorrow I'm training. And the day after, and the day after that. She pulled out clean bandages, starting to wrap her scraped palms. I have 3 months to transform from the pack's invisible healer into Luna material. I can't afford to waste a single day. Bonita sighed but didn't argue. Instead, she pulled out her mortar and pestle, beginning to grind ingredients for a muscle recovery paste. You know, your grandmother would be proud of you, stubborn to the point of stupidity, but proud. She also would have told me I'm an idiot for pushing so hard. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Bonita smiled. But for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Not the safe thing. Not the easy thing. But the right thing. Amparo finished bandaging her hands, looking down at the white wrappings. They reminded her of her grandmother's journal entry, fur the color of fresh snow. Could it really be true? Could she really be carrying the blood of the legendary white wolves? Or was it just another false hope, destined to shatter like all the others? Bonita, she said carefully, the white wolf bloodline, if it's real, how would it manifest? What would trigger the first shift? The older healer paused in her grinding. According to the legends, white wolves don't shift until they face impossible odds, until they're pushed to the absolute edge of what they can endure. It's as if their wolves wait until they're truly needed before emerging. So I need to almost die? I sincerely hope not. Bonita resumed her work. But the stories all involve moments of extreme danger or emotional trauma. The wolf emerges to save its human half, or to protect someone the human loves. Amparo thought of Gregory's golden eyes, the way the mate bond pulled at her constantly. If her wolf existed, wouldn't it have emerged to claim its mate? Wasn't that the ultimate purpose, to find your other half and bond completely? Unless her wolf was waiting for something else, something more. I should get back to work, Amparo said, pushing away from the counter. I have patients to check on, and standing around isn't going to. You're resting, Bonita interrupted firmly. At least until this evening. Those muscles need time to recover. And if you push too hard too fast, you'll injure yourself badly enough. That training will be impossible. But, no buts. Healing is part of training too. Your body needs time to adapt. Bonita pointed at the small cot in the corner of the infirmary. Sleep. That's an order from your mentor and your healer. Amparo wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight. The adrenaline that had carried her through the obstacle course was fading, leaving only pain and fatigue in its wake. She collapsed onto the cot, asleep before her head fully settled on the pillow. She dreamed of white wolves and golden eyes, of running through forests with 4 legs instead of 2, of a voice that whispered soon, sister. Soon in a language older than words. When she woke, evening shadows stretched across the infirmary floor. Her body ached. But it was a manageable pain, the kind that came from muscles worked hard but not broken. And somewhere in the distance, she could feel Gregory Conrad's presence, steady as a heartbeat, constant as the moon. 3 months. Amparo stood, testing her weight, rolling her shoulders. Everything protested. But everything worked. 3 months to become someone worthy of standing beside an alpha. 3 months to prove that strength came in many forms. 3 months to discover if the legendary White Wolf bloodline was real, or just another beautiful lie. She walked to the window, looking out at the packlands bathed in twilight. Somewhere out there, Gregory was probably discussing strategy with Alpha Dante, making plans for his pack, doing all the important things that alphas did. And here she was battered, exhausted, still wolfless. But not broken. Never broken. 3 months, she whispered to the gathering darkness. Let's see what I can become in 3 months. The mate bond thrummed in response. And for just a moment, Amparo could have sworn she felt something else, something deep inside her. Waiting, watching, preparing to emerge when the time was right. Soon, the feeling whispered. Soon. Chapter 4. When the wolfless speaks, alphas listen. 2 weeks passed in a blur of pain and progress. Amparo woke before dawn each day, her body protesting every movement, and dragged herself to the training grounds. Ramon had adjusted his expectations, not lowered them, she noticed, but made them more strategic. 5 laps instead of 20. Hand-to-hand combat drills focused on technique rather than brute strength. Weapons training with knives and staffs that didn't require shifted power to wield effectively. She was still the worst fighter on the training grounds by a significant margin. But she was improving. Better. Ramon grunted as she successfully blocked his strike, and countered with a knife thrust that would have hit his ribs if they were fighting for real. You're starting to think like a warrior, using speed and precision instead of trying to overpower your opponent. Hard to overpower anyone when you're half their size and have no supernatural strength. Amparo panted, wiping sweat from her face. Exactly. So you fight smart, instead of strong. He reset his stance. Again. And this time, watch my feet. I telegraph my moves. They sparred for another hour before Ramon called a halt. Amparo's arms trembled with exhaustion, but she'd landed 3 good hits, more than she'd managed in her first week. Go clean up, Ramon said, tossing her a water skin. You're attending the council meeting this afternoon, right? How did you know about that? The whole pack knows. You've been shadowing Alpha Dante for 2 weeks, sitting in on every meeting, every negotiation, every diplomatic session. He gave her an approving nod. Smart move. Luna isn't just about fighting, it's about politics too. Amparo drank deeply, the water cooling her parched throat. I'm trying to understand what leadership actually looks like, how alphas make decisions, how they balance competing needs, how they maintain authority without tyranny. And what have you learned? She considered the question carefully. That leadership is exhausting, that every decision affects dozens of lives, that the weight of responsibility never gets lighter, you just get stronger at carrying it. Ramon's weathered face split into a rare smile. Now you're thinking like a Luna. Go on, you don't want to be late. Amparo hurried back to her cottage, washing quickly and changing into one of her better dresses, still simple, but clean and presentable. Bonita had helped her acquire several new outfits, insisting that if Amparo was going to attend council meetings, she needed to look the part. You can be practical and still present yourself with dignity, Bonita had said while hemming one of the dresses. Besides, appearances matter in politics. Unfortunate, but true. The council chamber was already filling when Amparo arrived. She'd learned to arrive early, to take a seat near the back where she could observe without being obtrusive. Alpha Dante acknowledged her with a slight nod, his silent approval of her presence. Gregory Conrad entered moments later, and as always, the mate bond flared to life. 2 weeks of proximity had done nothing to diminish the pull. If anything, it had grown stronger, more insistent, a constant awareness of his every movement and emotion. He took his usual place beside Alpha Dante, his golden eyes finding her across the room. Something had shifted in his gaze over the past 2 weeks. The disappointment had faded, replaced by something more complex: curiosity, perhaps, or cautious interest. Today's agenda, Alpha Dante began, concerns the eastern border dispute with the Riverside Pack. They claim our hunting parties have been crossing into their territory. Because we have been, Clifford Stevenson, one of the senior warriors, spoke up. The deer herds have shifted east this season. We follow the game, that's how hunting works. And Riverside says we're depleting their resources. Alpha Dante leaned forward. They're threatening to bring the matter before the Council of Alphas if we don't negotiate a resolution. Amparo listened as the council debated, some arguing for stronger borders, others suggesting a shared hunting agreement, still others wanting to simply ignore Riverside's complaints and dare them to escalate. If I may, she spoke up, her voice carrying across the chamber. Conversations stopped, heads turned. Alpha Dante raised an eyebrow but gestured for her to continue. The deer herds shift because they follow water sources during dry season, Amparo said, standing so everyone could see her. There's a creek that runs through both territories. It forms part of the border. If the creek is running low, the deer move to where water is more abundant. What's your point? Clifford asked. Not unkindly. My point is that this isn't really about hunting rights. It's about water access. She moved to the map spread across the council table, tracing the creek's path with her finger. This creek feeds into a larger river system. If we can negotiate shared water rights during dry season, including access for both packs' game, then the hunting dispute resolves itself. Silence followed her words. She could feel Gregory's eyes on her, intense and evaluating. Alpha Dante studied the map with new interest. That's actually brilliant. It reframes the entire conflict. It also gives us leverage, Gregory added, his deep voice drawing everyone's attention. Riverside has better water access upstream. But Clearwater has better grazing lands. A resource-sharing agreement benefits both packs. Exactly, Amparo said, meeting his eyes briefly before looking back at the map. And it creates precedent for future cooperation, rather than future conflicts. Alpha Dante smiled. I'll send a diplomatic envoy to Riverside tomorrow with this proposal. Well done, Amparo. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking Aluna provides. Pride warmed her chest, but she kept her expression neutral as she returned to her seat. Around her she could hear murmurs, some approving, others surprised, a few clearly still skeptical. Maricela, sitting with several other high-ranking females, looked furious. The meeting continued, covering various pack business, a dispute between 2 families over property lines, concerns about a potential rogue wolf spotted near the territory, planning for the upcoming harvest festival. Amparo contributed twice more, once suggesting a mediation process for the property dispute, once offering to send a scouting party with Wolfsbane to track the rogue without triggering an aggressive confrontation. Both suggestions were adopted. When the meeting ended, Gregory caught up with her in the hallway outside the chamber. That was impressive, he said without preamble. Which part? All of it. The water rights solution was clever. You see connections others miss. It's what healers do, Amparo replied, trying to ignore the way her heart raced at his proximity. We look at symptoms to find the underlying disease. Politics isn't that different. You have to understand what's really driving the conflict, not just what people say they're fighting about. Not all healers can translate that skill to leadership. He fell into step beside her as she walked toward the infirmary. You have a gift for it. Is that surprise I hear in your voice, Alpha Conrad? Gregory, he corrected. And yes, I suppose it is. I expected you to focus solely on physical training, trying to compensate for your lack of shifting ability with combat skills. Combat is important, but it's not everything. She paused at the infirmary door. A Luna who can only fight is just a warrior with a fancier title. A true Luna needs to be a strategist, a diplomat, a counselor, and a dozen other things. You've thought about this extensively. I've had 23 years to think about what kind of leader I'd want to follow, what qualities matter, what makes someone worthy of respect and loyalty. She met his eyes directly. Being able to shift into a wolf is powerful, but it's not the only power that matters. Gregory studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're not what I expected. Good or bad? I'm not sure yet, but there was a hint of warmth in his voice that hadn't been there before. Join me for dinner tonight. In the private dining room at the Alpha's lodge, Amparo's breath caught. Is that a request or a command? It's an invitation. One, you're free to decline if you wish. He took a step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. But I'd like to get to know my mate better. Beyond council meetings and training grounds. The mate bond sang with approval, urging her to say yes, to close the distance between them, to finally give in to the pull that had been tormenting her for 2 weeks. Why? The question came out sharper than she intended. 2 weeks ago, you could barely look at me. Now you want to have dinner? 2 weeks ago. I thought I knew what kind of mate the moon goddess had given me. His voice was quiet, meant only for her ears. I was wrong, and I'd like the chance to correct that mistake. Amparo wanted to say yes. Goddess, how she wanted to say yes. But caution held her back, the same caution that had protected her heart through years of rejection and disappointment. One condition, she said finally. Name it. No mate bond discussion. No talk of the 3-month trial or proving myself or any of that. She crossed her arms. If we're having dinner, we're having it as 2 people getting to know each other. Not as Alpha and potential Luna. Agreed. He extended his hand. Dinner at sunset. Just 2 people, nothing more. She took his hand, the contact sending electricity up her arm. The mate bond flared so strongly she nearly gasped, and from the way Gregory's pupils dilated, he felt it too. Sunset, she managed to say. He released her hand and walked away, leaving Amparo standing in the infirmary doorway with her heart racing and her palms tingling where he'd touched her. Well, well. Bonita's voice came from behind her. That looked intense. Amparo jumped, spinning to find her mentor watching from inside the infirmary with an amused expression. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to see you negotiate dinner terms like a proper Luna. Bonita grinned. I'm proud of you, child. 2 weeks ago you could barely speak to him without looking devastated. Now you're setting boundaries and demanding respect. I'm terrified, Amparo admitted, leaning against the doorframe. What if I say something stupid? What if the mate bond makes everything awkward? What if you just enjoy a meal with an attractive male who's clearly interested in you? Bonita interrupted. Not everything has to be a test or a trial, Amparo. Sometimes a dinner is just a dinner. Not with Gregory Conrad. Everything with him is complicated. Only because you make it complicated. Bonita pulled her inside, already moving toward the supply closet. Now, we have approximately 5 hours until sunset. Let's make sure you look like someone worth having dinner with. I can dress myself. Can you style your hair in something other than a functional braid? Do you own any jewelry? When was the last time you wore something that wasn't covered in blood or dirt or medical supplies? Amparo opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Bonita had a point. Fine. But nothing too elaborate. I'm still me. Not some what? Some beautiful female worthy of an alpha's attention? Bonita's voice was gentle but firm. That's exactly what you are, Amparo. You've just been hiding it for so long you forgot. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. Bonita produced a dress Amparo had never seen, deep green silk that brought out the amber flecks in her dark eyes. It was simple but elegant, fitted enough to show she had a figure beneath her usual shapeless work clothes. Where did this come from? Amparo asked, running her fingers over the soft fabric. I had it made, just in case. Bonita smiled at her surprised expression. Did you think I didn't notice you attending council meetings, training with warriors, preparing yourself for Luna duties? I knew you'd need proper clothes eventually. Bonita also insisted on washing and styling Amparo's hair, leaving it loose in dark waves that fell past her shoulders. A touch of color on her lips, a simple silver necklace that had belonged to her grandmother, and suddenly Amparo barely recognized herself in the mirror. I look Beautiful, Bonita finished. You look beautiful, as you always have been, when you're not deliberately making yourself invisible. Amparo stared at her reflection. The female looking back at her was confident, poised, striking in a way that had nothing to do with classical beauty and everything to do with presence. He's going to think I'm trying too hard, she said nervously. He's going to think you respect yourself enough to present yourself well. Bonita squeezed her shoulders. Now go. Be yourself. Be brilliant. And for the love of the moon goddess, try to have fun. The walk to the Alpha's lodge felt simultaneously too long and too short. Amparo's heart pounded with each step, the mate bond pulling stronger as she approached Gregory's location. The private dining room was small and intimate, a table set for two, candles providing soft lighting, windows open to let in the evening breeze. Gregory stood as she entered, and the look on his face made every nervous moment worthwhile. Amparo. Her name was barely a breath. You look different, she supplied, suddenly self-conscious. Stunning. He moved to pull out her chair, a gesture so unexpectedly courteous it caught her off guard. I've never seen you with your hair down. I usually keep it braided for practical reasons. She sat, acutely aware of his proximity as he pushed in her chair. Loose hair and medical work don't mix well. He took his seat across from her, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. 2 weeks of stolen glances and formal interactions, and now, suddenly, they were alone together without the buffer of pack business or training grounds. Thank you for coming, Gregory said. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Honesty felt safer than pretense. I'm still not entirely sure what this is. Neither am I, he admitted. But I thought we should try to figure it out. A server entered with the first course, roasted vegetables and fresh bread, simple but well prepared. They ate in comfortable silence for a few moments before Gregory spoke again. Tell me about your grandmother. What? You mentioned her once, that she was the pack's healer before Bonita. I'd like to know more about her. He set down his fork. If we're getting to know each other, I want to understand where you come from. Amparo studied him, searching for signs of mockery or false interest. She found only genuine curiosity. She raised me after my parents died, she began slowly. She was fierce, brilliant. Everyone respected her, even the alphas. When she walked into a room, people paid attention. But she couldn't protect me from being wolfless. Amparo picked at her bread. She tried, took me to every specialist, performed every ritual, consulted every ancient text. Nothing worked. I think it broke her heart, watching me grow up different. Or maybe it didn't. Gregory leaned forward. Maybe she saw something in you that others missed. What could she possibly have seen? I'm exactly what I appear to be, a wolfless healer with no particular gifts. No particular gifts? He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Amparo, in 2 weeks you've impressed the head warrior, solved a border dispute that's been brewing for months, and demonstrated more strategic thinking than wolves who've been in leadership for years. How is that not gifted? She met his eyes, seeing sincerity there that made her chest ache. Those aren't wolf gifts. They don't matter in a pack. They matter more than you think. His expression grew serious. I've been Alpha of Shadowmere for 7 years. In that time, I've seen strong warriors make terrible leaders and brilliant strategists save countless lives. Strength matters, but wisdom matters more. Tell that to your pack. Tell them you're bringing home a wolfless Luna and see how they react. My pack will follow my choice. The Alpha command in his voice was unmistakable. If I deem you worthy, they will accept you. And do you? The question hung between them. Deem me worthy? Gregory was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes never leaving hers. I'm beginning to. The rest of dinner passed in easier conversation. Gregory told her about Shadowmere, a pack built on warrior tradition but struggling with the changing times, where combat prowess mattered less than it once had and diplomatic skill grew more crucial. We're still respected, he said, but we're also feared. Other packs see us as aggressive, quick to anger, difficult to negotiate with. It makes alliances harder. Is that why you're here? To soften your pack's reputation? Partially. But also because Clearwater has something we need: access to trade routes through the mountain passes. And we have something they need: military strength to back up their merchant ventures. He smiled. Politics, as you so astutely noted, is about finding the underlying needs. And what do you need? The question was bold. Intimate. Gregory held her gaze. I need a Luna who can help my pack evolve. Someone who can bridge the gap between our warrior traditions and the diplomatic future we're moving toward. Someone strong enough to stand beside me, not just behind me. And you think I could be that person? I think you might already be that person. You just haven't had the chance to prove it yet. The candles burned lower as they talked about pack politics and healing techniques, about the books they'd read and the places they'd seen. Gregory had traveled extensively before becoming Alpha, visiting packs across multiple territories. Amparo had never left Clearwater lands. I'd like to show you Shadowmere, he said as dessert arrived, honey cakes with berry compote. When this is over, regardless of how it ends, you should see the mountains, the valleys. It's beautiful in a harsh, wild way. I'd like that. The words came easier now, the tension between them softening into something that felt almost like friendship, almost like more. When dinner ended, Gregory walked her back toward her cottage, the evening air cool and pleasant. They moved slowly, neither quite ready to end the night. Thank you, Amparo said as they reached her door. For tonight, for treating me like my equal. He stepped closer. That's what you are, Amparo. Mate bond or not, you've earned my respect these past 2 weeks. But not your acceptance. Not yet. No, he admitted. Not yet. I still need to know you can handle what being my Luna entails. The pressures, the dangers, the responsibilities. But I'm open to the possibility now in a way I wasn't before. I suppose that's progress. She smiled, and his breath caught slightly at the expression. You should smile more often, he said quietly. It transforms your whole face. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. The mate bond urged her to close the distance, to kiss him, to claim what was hers. But Amparo stepped back instead. Good night, Gregory. Disappointment flashed across his face, quickly masked. Good night, Amparo. She slipped inside, closing the door between them, leaning against it as her heart raced. She could still feel him on the other side, could hear his quiet sigh before his footsteps retreated. Bonita emerged from the back room, eyebrows raised in question. It went well, Amparo said before her mentor could ask. Just well? He said he respects me, that he's beginning to think I might be worthy. She touched her lips, remembering how close they'd been. But he still needs proof. Then we'll give him proof. Bonita smiled. One step at a time, child. One step at a time. That night, Amparo dreamed of white wolves again. But this time the wolf turned to look at her with eyes that matched her own, and spoke in a voice that resonated in her bones. Be patient, sister. Your time comes soon. Chapter 5. The Rogue Threat. The scream pierced the early morning quiet like a blade. Amparo bolted upright in bed, her healer's instincts immediately alert. Another scream followed this one closer, coming from the direction of the pack schoolhouse. She threw on clothes and grabbed her medical bag, running toward the sound. Other pack members were emerging from their homes, warriors already shifting and racing toward the disturbance. The scene that greeted her at the schoolhouse was chaos. 3 rogue wolves, mangy, wild-eyed, and desperate, had cornered a group of children who'd arrived early for lessons. Yvette Shea, one of the teachers, stood between the rogues and her students, her wolf form bristling with protective fury despite being outnumbered. Get back, Yvette snarled, snapping at the largest rogue when it tried to circle around her. The children huddled behind overturned desks, 10 of them, ranging in age from 5 to 12. Too young to shift effectively, too terrified to run. One girl, no more than 6 years old, was crying silently, blood streaming from a gash on her arm where a rogue had gotten too close. Warriors were converging on the schoolhouse, but they'd have to be careful. One wrong move and the rogues might attack the children directly. Amparo's mind raced. She couldn't fight, couldn't shift, couldn't physically protect anyone. But she could think. The rogues were clearly starving, their ribs showed through matted fur, their movements jerky with desperation. They weren't here to kill. They were here for food, and they'd stumbled onto the schoolhouse by accident. Don't attack, Amparo shouted to the approaching warriors. They're starving. If you threaten them, they'll panic and the children will get hurt. Ramon, in his massive brown wolf form, skidded to a halt. His eyes found hers, questioning her judgment, even as his body tensed for battle. Amparo ran to the storage shed beside the schoolhouse, the one where they kept supplies for pack meals. She grabbed 3 large cuts of raw venison, her hands shaking but her mind clear. "Amparo, what are you doing?" Bonita had arrived, her medical bag in hand. "Giving them what they want." Amparo walked slowly toward the schoolhouse, holding the meat in front of her. "Hey, over here! Are you insane?" Maricella's voice rang out. She stood with several other pack members, all watching in horror. "You're going to get yourself killed." Amparo ignored her, focusing entirely on the rogues. Their heads had turned at her shout, nostrils flaring as they caught the scent of fresh meat. "That's right," she said, keeping her voice calm and steady. "Food. Real food. You don't need to hurt anyone. Just come get the meat." The largest rogue and male with one torn ear took a step toward her, then another. His companions followed, drawn by hunger stronger than aggression. "Yvette," Amparo called without taking her eyes off the rogues. "Get the children out. Slowly, no sudden movements." The teacher began herding her students toward the back exit, moving with careful precision. The rogues watched but didn't pursue, their attention fixed on the meat in Amparo's hands. When the last child had cleared the building, Amparo threw the venison toward the rogues. They fell upon it with savage desperation, all pretense of coordination vanishing in the face of starvation. "Now!" Ramon's command rang out. Warriors flooded the schoolhouse, subduing the distracted rogues before they could react. It was over in seconds, 3 rogues pinned, snarling and snapping but contained. Amparo's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the ground, adrenaline finally catching up with her. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her medical bag. Strong hands lifted her. Gregory's scent surrounded her, cedar and lightning and something wild with anger. "What were you thinking?" His voice was low, dangerous. "You could have been killed. The children would have been fine. The warriors would have protected them, not without casualties." Amparo pulled away from him, standing on her own shaky legs. Those rogues were desperate, not malicious. They would have fought to the death if cornered, and children would have been caught in the crossfire. "So you risked yourself instead?" He stepped closer, his golden eyes blazing. "You, who can't shift, can't defend yourself, can't heal from injuries the way we can. Someone had to de-escalate the situation. Someone who isn't my mate." The words exploded from him, raw and unfiltered. The admission hung in the air between them, the first time he'd truly claimed her as his, even in anger. Before Amparo could respond, Bonita's urgent voice cut through the tension. "Amparo, the injured child." She ran to where Bonita knelt beside the 6-year-old girl Neva Morales, daughter of one of the pack's hunters. The gash on her arm was deep, bleeding heavily. And worse, the edges were already showing signs of infection. Rogue bites were notoriously toxic, their saliva carrying bacteria from poor diet and lack of pack healing. "Silver fever," Amparo said immediately, recognizing the telltale discoloration around the wound. "The rogue's bite introduced infection. We need to get her to the infirmary now." They carried little Neva at a run, Amparo barking orders as they moved. "Bonita, prepare a purification bath, hot water. Sage, yarrow, and silver root. We need to draw out the infection before it reaches her bloodstream." At the infirmary, they worked with practiced efficiency. Amparo cleaned the wound with solutions that made Neva scream and cry, but there was no gentle way to do this. Silver fever could kill a child in hours if left untreated. "You're doing so well, sweetheart," Amparo murmured as she stitched the wound closed. "So brave." Almost done. Gregory stood in the doorway, watching. His expression was unreadable, but the mate bond thrummed with turbulent emotion, anger, fear, something that felt almost like pride. 2 hours later, Neva's fever had broken. The silver fever was contained, the wound properly cleaned and dressed. She'd carry a scar, but she'd live. "Thank you," Neva's mother sobbed, clutching Amparo's hands. "You saved my baby. Those rogues would have, and you just walked right up to them." "Any healer would have done the same," Amparo said, exhaustion pulling at her. "No." Alpha Dante's voice came from the doorway. He stood beside Gregory, his expression grave. Any healer would have waited for the warriors to handle it. You put yourself between predators and children without a second thought. That's not healing. That's leadership. Or stupidity, Maricella's voice cut in. She'd appeared behind the alphas, her silver wolf still shimmering beneath her skin. Walking up to rogues unarmed? That's not brave. It's suicidal. What kind of Luna would throw her life away so recklessly? The kind who values packed children over her own safety, Gregory said quietly, his eyes never leaving Amparo. The kind who sees what needs to be done and does it, regardless of personal risk. Maricella's mouth opened, then closed. She shot Amparo a look of pure venom before stalking away. The rogues, Amparo said, looking at Alpha Dante. What will happen to them? They'll be held for questioning, then likely exiled to neutral territories. His expression softened. Your assessment was correct. They were starving, not aggressive. We'll provide them with food and medical treatment before releasing them. Thank you. No, Amparo. Thank you. He glanced at Gregory. Your mate showed courage today. The kind of courage that can't be trained or taught. It simply is. He left, leaving Gregory and Amparo alone in the infirmary. Bonita had taken Neva and her mother to a recovery room, giving them privacy. You're angry with me, Amparo said. Not a question. I'm furious with you. Gregory moved closer, his movements controlled but tense. Do you have any idea what it felt like? Sensing your fear through the mate bond, racing to the schoolhouse, finding you walking toward 3 feral rogues like you were taking a casual stroll. I knew what I was doing. You knew nothing. His control cracked. You're not invulnerable, Amparo. You can't heal from massive trauma. A rogue bite could have killed you, and I would have had to watch my mate die before I ever really knew her. The raw emotion in his voice stopped her protests. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I wasn't trying to be reckless. I was trying to save the children the only way I knew how. I know. He ran both hands through his hair. A gesture of frustration she was learning meant he was struggling with conflicting emotions. That's what makes it worse. You weren't being reckless, you were being exactly what a Luna should be, putting pack before self, making the hard choice, leading through crisis. So you're angry that I did the right thing? I'm angry that the right thing almost got you killed. He stepped close enough to touch, his hand rising as if to cup her face, then falling away. I'm angry that I care more about your safety than I expected to, that the thought of losing you terrifies me when I'm supposed to be evaluating you objectively. Amparo's breath caught. Gregory, you're changing everything. He continued, the words tumbling out like a confession. My expectations, my plans, my ability to maintain distance. Every day you do something that makes me realize how wrong I was about you, how blind. I'm still wolfless, she reminded him, though her heart was racing. That hasn't changed. No. But maybe it doesn't matter as much as I thought it did. His golden eyes held hers. Maybe strength comes in forms I was too narrow-minded to recognize. The mate bond sang between them, urging them closer. This time, Amparo didn't pull away when his hand rose to cup her cheek. His palm was warm, calloused from weapon work, gentle despite his obvious strength. You're remarkable, he said softly. Frustrating and reckless, and absolutely remarkable. High praise from someone who wanted proof of my worth. You're proving it. Every single day. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I'm starting to think I'm the one who needs to prove worthy of you. Before Amparo could respond, a commotion outside interrupted the moment. Voices raised in alarm, the sound of running feet. They rushed to the window. In the distance, smoke rose from the southern border, thick, black, clearly not a controlled burn. Fire, Gregory said, his alpha instincts immediately taking over. That's near the patrol station. They ran outside to find Ramon already organizing warriors. The southern station is under attack, he reported. Not rogues, something worse. Bruno Maze's patrol team activated the emergency beacon before going silent. How many warriors were stationed there? Gregory demanded. 5. All experienced fighters. Ramon's face was grim. Whatever took them out did it fast. I'm going, Gregory said, already moving toward the forest. As am I, Alpha Dante declared, emerging from his lodge with his beta and several senior warriors. Take me with you, Amparo said. Absolutely not. Gregory's voice was flat, leaving no room for argument. You're staying here where it's safe. If there are injured warriors, they'll need medical attention immediately. Field medicine could mean the difference between life and death. I'll go, Bonita offered. I have more experience with battlefield healing. You have a bad hip that slows you down on rough terrain, Amparo countered. I'm faster, younger, and I won't slow the warriors down. Gregory looked ready to refuse, but Alpha Dante intervened. She has a point. If our warriors are injured, every second counts. Amparo comes. But that's my final decision. Dante's alpha command rang in his voice, making even Gregory's wolf submit. She stays with the healer's guard at a safe distance. If we need medical assistance, she'll be there. Gregory's jaw clenched, but he nodded curtly. They moved out in formation, 30 warriors in total, with Amparo positioned in the center surrounded by guards. The run south was punishing, the warriors setting a pace that pushed Amparo's human endurance to its limits, but she kept up. Barely, her lungs burning and legs screaming. But she kept up. The patrol station came into view, a small fortified building, now partially destroyed. The fire had been contained to one section, but the damage was extensive. More concerning were the bodies. 3 warriors lay in the clearing, clearly dead. Their throats had been torn out with savage efficiency, not the work of rogues or natural predators, something else entirely. Hunters, Ramon breathed, examining the bodies. Professional killers. They knew exactly how to take down shifted wolves. Where are the other 2? Gregory scanned the tree line, every muscle tensed for attack. A groan answered him, weak, coming from inside the partially collapsed building. Amparo didn't wait for permission. She ducked under Gregory's arm and ran toward the sound, her medical training overriding every sense of self-preservation. Amparo! Gregory's roar of fury followed her, but she was already inside. 2 warriors lay in the rubble, both severely injured, both bleeding out. She recognized them, Timothy Massey and Jonathan Maddox, both young but skilled fighters. I've got them, she called out, already opening her medical bag. They're alive but critical. Warriors poured in behind her, helping clear debris while she worked. Jonathan had a collapsed lung, she could tell from his labored breathing, and the asymmetry of his chest movement. Timothy's femoral artery had been nicked, not severed, thankfully, but bleeding heavily enough to be life-threatening. Her hands moved with practiced certainty. No room for fear or hesitation. Pressure on Timothy's artery. A makeshift seal for Jonathan's chest wound. Orders snapped out to warriors who scrambled to obey. We need to move them now, she said. Timothy first, he'll bleed out in minutes. Jonathan can last a bit longer if we keep that chest seal in place. Gregory lifted Timothy with shocking gentleness for someone so powerful, while Ramon took Jonathan. They ran back to packlands at a pace that should have been impossible. But warriors carrying injured packmates found reserves of strength that defied normal limits. Amparo ran beside them, monitoring both patients, adjusting bandages, making sure the chest seal stayed intact. Her own exhaustion meant nothing. These warriors had sacrificed themselves to protect the pack, and she'd be damned if she let them die on her watch. They burst into the infirmary, Bonita already prepared. Surgery on both warriors took 6 hours. 6 hours of precision work, of fighting to save lives that hung by threads, of refusing to accept that death was inevitable. When it was finally over, when both warriors were stable and sleeping off the anesthesia, Amparo collapsed against the wall. Her hands were steady, they always were during medical procedures, but now they shook violently as the adrenaline drained away. Gregory found her there, sliding down to sit beside her on the floor. You saved them, he said simply. We saved them. Bonita did the complex surgical work. After you kept them alive long enough to get here. After you ran into a partially collapsed building without knowing if more attackers were waiting. After you kept pace with warriors for miles while monitoring critical patients. He turned to look at her. Do you ever think of yourself? Your own safety? Do you? She countered. You led the charge into potential danger. Don't lecture me about self-preservation when you do the same thing. That's different. I'm an alpha. I'm trained for combat. I can heal from injuries that would kill you, and I'm a healer. I'm trained for saving lives. I can't live with myself if I let people die because I was too afraid to act. She met his eyes. We're not so different, Gregory. You lead your pack into battle. I lead my patients back from death. Both require courage. Both require sacrifice. He stared at her for a long moment, then did something completely unexpected. He laughed. A real laugh. Warm and genuine and filled with something that sounded like wonder. "You're right," he said. "Goddess help me, you're absolutely right. We're not different at all." He pulled her against his side, and this time, she let herself lean into him. The mate bond hummed with contentment, and for just a moment, Amparo let herself imagine this was real. That he wasn't testing her, evaluating her, waiting for her to fail. That he was simply her mate, and she was simply his. "The hunters will be back," Gregory said quietly, breaking the moment. "This was a coordinated attack, and they targeted our patrol station specifically. Someone is testing our defenses. Do you know who? I have suspicions. There are packs who'd benefit from weakening Clearwater, who'd prefer this alliance with Shadowmere never happened." His arm tightened around her. "It's going to get worse before it gets better. Then we'll face it together." The words came out before she could stop them. Gregory looked down at her, something shifting in his golden eyes. "Yes," he said softly, "together." Outside, the sun was setting on another day. Another day of proving herself, of fighting for acceptance, of becoming something more than what everyone expected. Another day closer to either claiming her mate or losing him forever. But right now, sitting beside him in the quiet infirmary, watching two warriors she'd saved breathe steadily in their recovery beds, Amparo let herself feel something dangerous. She let herself feel hope. Chapter 6. The Challenge That Changes Everything. Word of the hunter attack spread through the pack like wildfire. By morning, everyone knew that Amparo had run into danger to save injured warriors, that she'd kept them alive through sheer skill and determination, that 2 pack members owed their lives to the wolfless healer. The shift in how people looked at her was subtle but unmistakable. Warriors nodded respectfully when she passed. Families stopped her to express gratitude. Even wolves who'd ignored her for years suddenly acknowledged her presence. But not everyone was pleased. "It's pathetic, really," Maricella's voice carried across the dining hall during breakfast. She sat with her usual circle of admirers, high-ranking females who hung on her every word. One lucky save and suddenly she thinks she's Luna material, as if healing a couple of warriors erases the fact that she can't shift. Amparo kept her eyes on her food, refusing to take the bait. She'd learned long ago that engaging with Maricela only fed the other woman's cruelty. "I heard she nearly got herself killed running into that building," one of Maricela's friends added. "Reckless stupidity, not bravery." Exactly. A real Luna would have shifted and fought the hunters herself, instead of hiding behind warriors like a coward. Gregory's hand slammed down on the table, making dishes jump. He'd been sitting across from Amparo, and the sudden fury in his golden eyes made several nearby wolves flinch. "That's enough," he said, his voice deadly quiet but carrying alpha command that made Maricela's wolf whimper in submission. You were just insulting my mate. In my presence, in front of the entire pack." He stood, his full height and power on display. "Would you like to repeat those accusations to my face, Maricela? Tell me again how saving pack members is cowardice." Maricela's face went white. "Alpha Conrad, I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said. You always do." His eyes swept across the dining hall, landing on every wolf present. "Let me make something clear. Amparo Davila has shown more courage in the past 3 weeks than most warriors show in a lifetime. She's proven herself as a healer, a strategist, and a leader. Anyone who questions her worth questions my judgment. Is that understood?" Silence answered him, the heavy, absolute silence of wolves, recognizing true alpha authority. "I asked if that was understood," Gregory repeated, power bleeding into every word. A chorus of "yes, alpha," rippled through the hall. "Good." He turned back to Amparo, his expression softening slightly. "Finish your breakfast. We have training this morning." But Amparo had lost her appetite. The public defense should have felt good validation that she'd craved for years. Instead, it felt hollow. Gregory was defending her because she was his mate, not because he truly believed in her worth. Or was that unfair? He'd just called her courageous in front of the entire pack, praised her as a healer and leader. When had his words shifted from reluctant acknowledgement to genuine praise? She couldn't tell anymore. The mate bond made everything confusing, muddling her ability to distinguish between real emotion and wishful thinking. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly once they'd left the dining hall. Yes, I did. I won't tolerate disrespect toward my mate. Your potential mate, she corrected. You still have 6 weeks to decide if I'm worthy, remember? Gregory stopped walking, turning to face her. Amparo, don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me things have changed if you're still keeping me at arm's length. Don't defend my honor in public if you're still testing me in private. I can handle Maricella's cruelty. What I can't handle is mixed signals from you. What do you want from me? The question was raw, frustrated. I'm trying to be fair to both of us to give this a real chance, while still being responsible to my pack. What more can I do? I don't know, she admitted. But defending me because I'm yours feels different than defending me because you actually believe I'm worthy. One is possession. The other is respect. She walked away before he could respond, heading toward the infirmary where things made sense, where she knew her value, knew her purpose, knew exactly where she stood. Bonita looked up as she entered, taking in Amparo's expression with knowing eyes. Trouble with the alpha? Trouble with everything. Amparo began organizing medical supplies, a mindless task that required just enough focus to quiet her racing thoughts. He defended me in the dining hall, publicly claimed me as his mate, threatened anyone who disrespected me. That sounds positive. It felt possessive, like he was defending his property, not his partner. She set down a jar of salve, harder than necessary. I can't tell if he's actually starting to accept me or if he's just protecting his pride as an alpha. Maybe it's both. Bonita moved to help with the organizing. People are complicated, child. Especially alphas who've been trained to put duty before emotion. He can be protective of you as his mate, while also genuinely respecting what you've accomplished. Can he? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like he wants to keep me safe in a cage while I'm trying to prove I can fly. Before Bonita could respond, the infirmary door burst open. Clinton Ramsey, one of the senior warriors, stood in the doorway with an expression that meant trouble. Amparo, Alpha Dante needs you in the council chamber. Now. Her stomach dropped. What's wrong? Just come, quickly. The council chamber was packed when she arrived, every ranking pack member present. The atmosphere tense with barely contained conflict. Alpha Dante sat in his chair looking grim, Gregory standing beside him with his jaw clenched. And in the center of the room, looking far too pleased with herself, stood Maricela. Ah, there she is, Maricela said sweetly. The pack's miracle worker. What's this about? Amparo demanded. A challenge, Alpha Dante said heavily. Maricela has formally challenged your right to pursue the Luna position. Amparo's blood ran cold. On what grounds? On the grounds that you're wolfless and therefore fundamentally unfit to be Luna of any pack, let alone one as powerful as Shadowmere. Maricela stepped forward, her confidence absolute. According to pack law, any high-ranking female can challenge a potential Luna's worthiness. The challenge is traditionally settled through combat wolf against wolf, strength against strength. That's not possible, Amparo said flatly. I can't shift. You know I can't shift. Exactly my point. Maricela's smile was razor sharp. You can't even meet the most basic requirement of pack membership, let alone Luna status. This is a mercy. Really. Better to expose your inadequacy now than wait for you to fail Gregory's pack when it truly matters. This is ridiculous. Gregory's voice cut through the room like a whip. Amparo has proven herself in every other capacity, has she? Maricela turned to address the assembled wolves. She's a skilled healer. I'll grant you that. But a Luna must be able to fight beside her alpha, must be able to shift and lead warriors into battle, must be able to produce strong heirs who carry the pack's bloodline forward. Can she do any of those things? Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some agreeing, others uncertain, a few looking distinctly uncomfortable with the entire situation. The law is clear, Maricela continued. A challenge has been issued. It must be answered or conceded. Those are the only options. There has to be another way, Gregory said, but Amparo could hear the uncertainty in his voice. He knew pack law as well as anyone. Challenges were sacred tradition, dating back centuries. There is. All eyes turned to Amparo. She stepped forward, her chin raised, refusing to show the fear coursing through her veins. I accept the challenge. But I propose an alternative to combat. The law specifies combat. Maricela began. The law specifies a contest that demonstrates Luna-worthy qualities. Amparo interrupted, her voice steady. Combat is traditional, but not mandatory. I propose a series of trials instead, each one testing different aspects of Luna leadership. Combat, yes, but also strategy, healing, diplomacy, and wisdom. 5 trials total. Whoever wins the majority proves her worth. Silence fell as the council considered her proposal. That's actually within legal bounds. Denver Schmidt, the PAC's lawkeeper, spoke up. The old texts mention alternative challenge formats for special circumstances. A wolfless challenger would certainly qualify as special circumstances. This is absurd, Maricela protested. I issued a combat challenge, which I'm accepting, along with 4 additional trials. Amparo met her eyes directly. Unless you're afraid to compete on anything other than physical strength, scared that in matters of intelligence, strategy, and actual leadership skill, you might not measure up? Maricela's face flushed with anger. Fine. 5 trials. Combat, strategy, healing, diplomacy, and wisdom. We'll see how your supposed skills measure up when the stakes are real. Agreed. Amparo turned to Alpha Dante. I request that the trials be overseen by neutral judges, 1 from Clearwater, 1 from Shadowmere, and 1 from a neutral PAC. Approved, Dante said, looking both impressed and concerned. The trials will take place over 5 days, 1 trial per day. The first trial combat will be held tomorrow at noon. The council dispersed, leaving Amparo standing in the chamber with her heart pounding and her mind racing. What had she just done? Agreed to compete in combat against a trained warrior with a powerful wolf. She might as well have signed her own death warrant. Gregory caught her arm as she turned to leave. We need to talk. Do we? Amparo, you can't win a physical combat trial. Even with weapons, even with every advantage, Maricela will shift, and you'll be defenseless. I know. Then why did you accept? The frustration in his voice was palpable. You could have conceded, withdrawn your pursuit of the Luna position. No one would have blamed you. I would have blamed me. She pulled her arm free. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Proof that I can handle Luna challenges? Well, here's your proof. Either I'm strong enough to face Maricela and win, or I'm not worthy of being your mate. Simple as that. Nothing about this is simple. It is to me. She met his eyes, letting him see the determination there. I'm done being invisible. Done being dismissed. Done wondering if I'm good enough. Tomorrow, I either prove myself or I fail spectacularly. Either way, we'll both have our answer. She walked away, leaving Gregory standing in the empty council chamber, with an expression that might have been admiration or might have been grief. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ramon insisted on training her for combat, though they both knew it was nearly hopeless. Bonita prepared healing poultices in case of injuries when, not if, they both silently acknowledged. Other PAC members stopped by with advice, encouragement, or thinly veiled pity. As evening fell, Amparo found herself alone in her cottage, staring at her grandmother's journal. The entry about white wolves seemed to mock her with its promise of power that had never manifested. Their wolves are late bloomers, some don't shift until their 25th year, others until a great trauma forces the change. Tomorrow would certainly qualify as trauma. If her wolf was going to emerge, facing Maricela in combat should do it. But what if it didn't? What if the white wolf bloodline was just a story, a desperate hope with no foundation in reality? A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She opened the door to find Gregory standing there, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen from him. Can I come in? She stepped aside, letting him enter. He filled the small space, all power and presence, and barely contained emotion. I can't let you do this, he said without preamble. You don't get to make that choice. Amparo, she'll kill you. Maybe not intentionally, but in the heat of combat, accidents happen. Maricela isn't known for her restraint, so you think I should concede? Prove her right that I'm too weak, too fundamentally broken to ever be a Luna. I think you should choose to live rather than die proving a point. His control cracked, pain bleeding through. I can't watch you die tomorrow. I can't feel you die through the mate bond, while I stand there helpless to stop it. Then reject me now. The words came out harsh, desperate. If you're so certain I'll fail, so convinced I'm not strong enough, then end this. Reject the mate bond and free us both. I can't. Why not? Because despite everything, despite my doubts and fears and certainty that this can't possibly work, I'm falling in love with you. The confession exploded from him. Raw and unfiltered. Every day I watch you transform yourself, push past limits that would break lesser wolves, prove that strength comes in forms I never imagined. You're brilliant and brave and absolutely terrifying in your determination. And the thought of losing you tomorrow is killing me. Amparo's breath caught. Gregory, I know it's too soon. I know I have no right to these feelings when I've barely accepted you as my mate. But there it is. He stepped closer. I love you, Amparo, and I'm begging you not to die tomorrow for the sake of my pride or pack politics or proving yourself worthy. You're already worthy. I see it. I believe it. Then why am I still fighting for your acceptance? Her voice broke. Why is there still a timeline, still tests, still conditions on whether you'll claim me? Because I'm a coward. The admission was quiet, painful, because accepting you means accepting that everything I thought I knew about strength and leadership was wrong. It means facing my pack with a Luna they'll question, dealing with challenges and doubts and possible rebellion. It means risking everything for love instead of doing what's practical and safe. And you're not ready for that risk. I thought I wasn't. He cupped her face in both hands, his touch gentle despite his obvious power. But watching you agree to face Maricela tomorrow, knowing you'd rather die than give up, I realize the only risk I can't accept is losing you. He kissed her then, and the mate bond exploded between them. Every cell in her body sang with recognition, with rightness, with the absolute certainty that this was what the moon goddess had intended. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Gregory rested his forehead against hers. Withdraw from the challenge, he whispered. Please, I'll claim you right now, in front of the entire pack. No more tests, no more trials, just us, together as mates. It was everything she'd wanted, everything she'd been fighting for, acceptance, love, the end of proving herself over and over again. But it would be hollow, a victory given rather than earned. And worse, it would prove Maricela right, that she'd manipulated Gregory through the mate bond, seduced him into ignoring his pack's needs, convinced him to make an irresponsible choice out of emotion rather than reason. I can't, she said, tears streaming down her face. I love you too, Gregory. Goddess help me, I do. But I can't accept you like this with doubts still lingering, with questions about whether I'm truly worthy, or just the mate bond manipulating your judgment. I need to face Maricela. I need to prove myself, not just to you or the pack, but to myself, even if it kills you, especially if it kills you. She pulled back, wiping her tears. If I'm going to be your Luna, if I'm going to lead beside you and face down challenges and threats, I need to know I can stand on my own, that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes. You're already strong enough. Then tomorrow I'll prove it. She smiled through her tears. Have faith in me, Gregory. The way I'm learning to have faith in myself. He looked like he wanted to argue more, to find some way to change her mind. Instead, he pulled her close one more time, holding her like she was precious beyond measure. I'll be there tomorrow, he said into her hair. Watching, praying, having more faith than I've ever had in anything. And when you win, when, not if, I'm claiming you in front of everyone. No more doubts. No more tests. Just you and me, exactly as the moon goddess intended. When I win, she agreed, letting herself believe it for just a moment. He left shortly after, and Amparo was alone with her thoughts and fears, and the impossible challenge awaiting her at noon tomorrow. She pulled out her grandmother's journal one more time, running her fingers over the words. If her wolf doesn't come naturally, it will come when she needs it most. I need it now, grandmother, she whispered to the empty room. If the white wolf bloodline is real, if there's any truth to your stories, please. I need my wolf tomorrow. Only silence answered. Amparo lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling Gregory's presence in the distance, the steady pulse of the mate bond that both comforted and ached. Somewhere out there, he was probably lying awake too, wrestling with his own fears and doubts. Tomorrow would change everything. One way or another, The trials would reveal the truth, whether she truly possessed the strength to be Luna, or whether she'd been fooling herself all along. She closed her eyes, and in the darkness behind her lids, she could have sworn she saw a flash of white fur and silver eyes. "Tomorrow," a voice whispered from deep within. "Tomorrow, sister, you'll understand everything." Chapter 7. White fur, silver eyes, ancient power. The combat arena was packed. Every member of Clearwater Pack had gathered to witness the challenge, along with Gregory's Shadowmere warriors and representatives from 3 neighboring packs who'd arrived overnight. Word had spread fast the wolfless healer challenging a powerful shifted wolf was the kind of spectacle that drew crowds. Amparo stood at the edge of the arena, her body wrapped in light leather armor that Ramon had hastily modified to fit her. It wouldn't stop claws or fangs, but it might slow them down enough to prevent immediately fatal wounds. A small mercy. "Remember," Ramon said quietly beside her. "Stay mobile. Don't let her corner you. Use the environment, the posts, the barriers. Make her work for every strike. And when she shifts..." Amparo's voice was steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. "Pray your wolf finally decides to show up." He squeezed her shoulder. "But if it doesn't aim for the eyes, the throat, the joints, vulnerable spots that hurt regardless of supernatural healing." Across the arena, Maricela was stretching, her silver wolf already shimmering beneath her skin. She looked confident, relaxed, even a predator who knew the kill was assured. The 3 judges sat in elevated seats overlooking the arena. Alpha Dante represented Clearwater. Gregory represented Shadowmere, though the tension in his jaw and the white-knuckle grip on his chair's armrests showed how much he hated being forced to judge rather than intervene. The 3rd judge was Georgina Friedman, an elderly alpha from the neutral Riverbend pack, known for her fairness and unshakable adherence to tradition. "Combatants, approach." Georgina's voice rang out with surprising strength for her age. Amparo and Maricela met in the center of the arena. Up close, Amparo could see the anticipation in Maricela's ice-blue eyes, not just for victory, but for the humiliation she planned to inflict. "Any last words?" Maricela asked sweetly. "Perhaps you'd like to concede now, save yourself the embarrassment of being torn apart in front of your precious mate?" "I have words," Amparo replied calmly. "But they're not for you." She turned to face the crowd, raising her voice so everyone could hear. "I know what you all see when you look at me. Wolfless. Weak. Fundamentally broken. I've heard those words my entire life." She met the eyes of pack members who dismissed her, ignored her, pitied her. "But I've also learned something these past weeks. Strength isn't just teeth and claws. Leadership isn't just combat prowess. And worth isn't measured by whether you can shift." She turned back to Maricela. "So yes, I'll probably lose this trial. You're a trained warrior with a powerful wolf, and I'm a healer who's never won a real fight. But I'm here anyway. Fighting anyway. Refusing to accept that my value as a person, as a potential Luna, depends solely on abilities I don't possess." "Pretty speech," Maricela said. "Won't save you when my claws are at your throat. Perhaps not. But at least I'll go down fighting for what I believe in, rather than tearing down others to feel powerful." Maricela's eyes flashed with anger, her wolf rising closer to the surface. "Good. Angry opponents made mistakes. Combatants, take your positions," Georgina commanded. "The trial begins at the sound of the horn. First blood ends the match, or submission by either party. Lethal force is prohibited, but injuries are expected. Do you both understand?" "Yes," they answered in unison. Amparo retreated to her starting position, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel Gregory through the mate bond, his fear, his faith, his love, all tangled together in a knot of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. "I'm sorry," she thought toward him, not sure if he could feel her intention through the bond. "But I have to do this." The horn sounded. Maricela shifted immediately, her transformation fluid and beautiful. Where a woman had stood, now crouched a massive silver wolf. Easily 400 pounds of muscle and fang and supernatural speed. Amparo ran. She wasn't stupid enough to face a shifted wolf head-on. Her only advantage was intelligence and unpredictability. She had to use both. Maricela lunged, covering the distance between them in seconds. Amparo dove sideways, rolling behind one of the wooden posts that dotted the arena. Claws raked the wood where her head had been, leaving deep gouges. The silver wolf circled, yellow eyes tracking her prey with predatory focus. Amparo kept the post between them, moving when Maricela moved, using the barrier as temporary protection. "Stand and fight, coward," someone in the crowd yelled. But Amparo ignored them, focused entirely on survival. Maricela feinted left, then attacked right fast, too fast. Claws caught Amparo's arm, tearing through leather and flesh. Blood welled up, hot and immediate. First blood. The trial should be over. But Georgina hadn't called it. Amparo glanced at the judges and saw why they were consulting, arguing in low voices. The rules said, first blood or submission. As long as neither combatant yielded, the fight could continue until one injury proved decisive. Maricela had known. She'd planned this a loophole that would let her inflict maximum damage while staying within legal bounds. Pain radiated from Amparo's arm, but she forced herself to move. Maricela attacked again, and this time Amparo was ready. She grabbed a handful of the sand that covered the arena floor and threw it directly at the wolf's eyes. Maricela yelped, shaking her head, momentarily blinded. Amparo used those precious seconds to grab one of the weighted training staffs at the arena's edge. Not a real weapon, but better than nothing. The silver wolf recovered quickly, rage replacing calculation in her eyes. She charged. No more strategy, just fury in claws and teeth. Amparo swung the staff with everything she had. It connected with Maricela's ribs with a satisfying crack. Not enough to seriously injure a shifted wolf, but enough to hurt. Enough to shock. The crowd roared with surprise. The wolfless healer had landed a blow, but Maricela's retaliation was swift and brutal. She batted the staff aside, sending it flying across the arena, then slammed into Amparo with her full weight. They went down hard, Amparo's back hitting the ground with bone-jarring force. Silver jaws snapped inches from her face. Only her forearm, thrown up desperately in defense, kept those teeth from her throat. Fangs sank into flesh, and Amparo screamed the pain white-hot and all-consuming. Through the agony, she heard Gregory roar a sound of pure anguish that made her mate bond flare with desperate intensity. "Fight," something whispered deep inside her. "Fight, sister. We're not done yet." Amparo's free hand scrabbled in the sand, finding a sharp rock. Not much of a weapon, but desperation made everything useful. She drove it into the soft tissue behind Maricela's ear, a pressure point she knew from healing work. The wolf released her arm with a yelp, stumbling back. Amparo rolled away, cradling her mangled forearm. Blood poured from the wound, more than any human could afford to lose. Her vision swam, darkness creeping in at the edges. "Get up," the voice insisted. "Get up. You're stronger than this." But she wasn't. Her body was shutting down, going into shock. She could see Maricela recovering, preparing for the final strike. Could feel Gregory's horror through the bond, his desperate need to intervene held back only by the sacred rules of challenge. "Please," Amparo thought toward whatever presence lurked inside her. "If you're real, if the White Wolf bloodline is real, I need you now. I can't do this alone." Maricela charged, and something inside Amparo broke. Not broke, shattered, like a dam giving way, like chains snapping, like a door that had been locked her entire life suddenly exploding open. Power flooded through her ancient vast, absolutely terrifying in its intensity. Her bones began to crack and reshape, her skin rippling with the beginning of a transformation she'd thought impossible. "Finally," the voice sang with joy. "Finally, you're ready." The shift was agony and ecstasy combined. Her first shift, the moment every wolf dreamed of happening in the worst possible circumstances. With no training, no preparation, nothing but desperation and instinct to guide her. But it was happening. White fur erupted across her skin, pure as fresh snow. Her body expanded, reshaped, transformed into something magnificent and powerful. And through it all, she could feel her wolf. Finally, after 23 years of silence rising to meet the threat, the transformation completed in seconds that felt like hours. Where Amparo had knelt, bleeding and broken, now stood a wolf. Not just any wolf. A white wolf. The entire arena fell silent, a hush so complete that the only sound was wind rustling through the trees beyond the packlands. Even Maricela had frozen mid-charge, her silver form suddenly seeming small compared to the creature before her. Amparo's wolf was massive, larger than Maricela, larger than any wolf present except perhaps Gregory. Her fur was indeed white as starlight, just as her grandmother's journal had described. But it was her eyes that drew gasps from the crowd. Pure silver, glowing with an otherworldly light that spoke of ancient bloodlines and forgotten power. "Hello, sister," her wolf's voice resonated through her mind, warm and amused. "Shall we show them what we're capable of?" Amparo didn't answer with words. She answered with action. She moved with speed that shouldn't have been possible for a newly shifted wolf, crossing the arena in a blur of white fur. Maricela tried to dodge, but Amparo's instincts, or perhaps her wolf's ancient memory, guided her perfectly. They collided, two powerful wolves grappling for dominance. But where Maricela had training and experience, Amparo had something else. Pure, raw power that came from a bloodline so old it predated modern pack structures. The white wolf had been known for two things in the ancient stories: healing abilities and unmatched combat prowess. Amparo was discovering the latter firsthand. She pinned Maricela with ease, jaws closing gently around the silver wolf's throat, not biting, just holding. A clear demonstration of dominance, of victory, of the fight's inevitable conclusion. "Submit," Amparo's wolf commanded, the word carrying alpha authority despite Amparo never having led anything in her life. "Or I make you submit." Maricela struggled briefly, then went limp, the universal wolf signal of surrender. Amparo released her and stepped back, her white wolf standing tall and proud in the center of the arena. Around them, the silence finally broke, voices rising in shock, wonder, disbelief. "The white wolf," Georgina breathed, standing from her judge's seat with an expression of awe. "The legends are true. The bloodline survived. Amparo Davila wins the first trial," Alpha Dante announced, his voice carrying shock and pride in equal measure. By submission of her opponent and demonstration of shifting ability, Amparo shifted back to human form, the transformation coming easier now, natural despite never having done it before. She stood naked in the arena for a moment, before someone threw her a cloak, which she wrapped around herself gratefully. Her injured arm had healed during the shift, only faint scars remaining where Maricela's fangs had torn flesh. Her entire body thrummed with energy, with the joy of finally being complete after a lifetime of feeling broken. Gregory was suddenly there, pulling her into his arms, despite the impropriety of such displays in public. Through the mate bond, she could feel everything: his relief, his pride, his absolute wonder at what she'd become. "A white wolf," he murmured into her hair. "My mate is a goddess-blessed white wolf. I didn't know," she said, still dazed. "I hoped, but I didn't know for certain." "Your grandmother knew. She must have known." He pulled back to look at her, his golden eyes bright with unshed tears. "Do you understand what this means? White wolves are legendary. They're born once in a generation. If that, they're considered blessed by the moon goddess herself. If Amparo's transformation just gave you chills, please like this video." Around them, the crowd was in chaos. Some celebrating, others arguing, many simply staring at Amparo with expressions ranging from respect to fear to outright worship. Maricela had shifted back to human form, her face ashen as she stared at Amparo. All her confidence, all her cruel superiority, had evaporated in the face of absolute proof that she'd been wrong. "Impossible," Maricela whispered. "You were wolfless." "Everyone said. Everyone was wrong," Amparo said calmly. "As were you. About my worth, about my capabilities, about what makes someone fit to be Luna." "The first trial is complete," Georgina announced, her aged voice carrying authority that silenced the crowd. "Amparo Davila has won decisively. The remaining 4 trials will proceed as scheduled. Strategy tomorrow, healing the following day, then diplomacy and wisdom." "Maricela kid, do you wish to continue the challenge?" Maricela looked at Amparo, really looked at her for perhaps the first time. Saw not the wolfless outcast but a white wolf, a creature of legend, someone who'd proven her strength in the most dramatic way possible. "Yes," Maricela said finally, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "The challenge stands. Shifting ability is only one aspect of Luna worthiness. I still intend to prove myself superior in the remaining trials." "So be it," Georgina declared. "This council is adjourned until tomorrow." The crowd dispersed slowly, many lingering to stare at Amparo with new eyes. She could hear whispered conversations, white wolf, blessed, legendary words she'd never imagined would be associated with her. Bonita pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she said, pulling Amparo into a fierce embrace. "She knew. All those years she knew what you'd become. Why didn't she tell me?" Amparo's voice broke. "Why let me suffer, thinking I was broken? Because white wolves don't emerge through comfort," Bonita said gently. "They emerge through adversity, through being pushed to the absolute edge of what they can endure. If you'd known, if you'd been waiting for it to happen, it might never have come. The wolf emerges when you need it most, when you've proven yourself worthy through your humanity first." It made a terrible, beautiful kind of sense. Every rejection, every moment of being dismissed and overlooked, every time she'd chosen to push forward despite having no supernatural advantages, all of it had been building to this moment, forging her into someone strong enough to handle the power now flowing through her veins. "Come," Gregory said, his hand warm on her shoulder. "You need to rest. Shifting for the first time is exhausting, and you have 4 more trials ahead." He guided her away from the arena, back toward her cottage, his presence steady and comforting through the mate bond. Other pack members parted to let them pass, many bowing their heads in respect, a gesture previously reserved for alphas and high-ranking wolves. "This changes everything," Amparo said once they were alone in her cottage. "Yes." Gregory pulled her close, his arms encircling her like she was something precious. "But perhaps not in the way you think. You've proven you can shift, that you carry legendary bloodline. But I was already falling in love with you before this happened. Before you became the White Wolf. When you were just Amparo, brilliant, stubborn, impossibly brave Amparo. Just Amparo was never enough for anyone. She was always enough for me." He tilted her chin up, making her meet his eyes. "I was too blind to see it at first, too caught up in expectations and duty to recognize what the moon goddess had given me. But these past weeks, watching you transform yourself through sheer determination, that's when I fell in love. Not with your wolf, magnificent as she is, but with you." Tears spilled down Amparo's cheeks. "I love you too. Even when you were being an impossible judgmental alpha, I loved you." He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. The mate bond sang between them, stronger now that both their wolves could recognize and respond to each other. When they finally broke apart, Gregory rested his forehead against hers. 4 more trials," he said. "And then, regardless of outcome, I'm claiming you as my mate in front of both our packs. No more tests, no more proving yourself. Just us, exactly as we're meant to be. What if Maricela wins the remaining trials?" "She won't." His confidence was absolute. "Because you're not just powerful now, Amparo. You've always been brilliant, strategic, compassionate, all the qualities a Luna needs. Today you simply added physical strength to an already formidable list. Maricela doesn't stand a chance. Don't underestimate her. She's clever, and she has something to prove now. So do you." He smiled, the expression warm and full of pride. "My white wolf Luna. The pack won't know what hit them." Amparo laughed, the sound surprising her. For the first time in her life, she felt whole, complete. Not because she'd finally shifted, but because she'd proven to herself and everyone else that her worth had never depended on that ability. The shift was a gift, yes, a powerful addition to her capabilities, but it wasn't what made her worthy of being Luna. That worthiness had been forged over 23 years of enduring rejection, of choosing kindness when the world showed her cruelty, of pushing forward when every instinct said to give up. Her wolf had simply been waiting for her to recognize that truth herself. "Well done, sister," her wolf murmured contentedly in her mind. "Tomorrow we show them what else we're capable of." Amparo smiled, feeling more confident about the coming trials than she'd felt about anything in years. 4 more days to prove herself, and then finally she'd claim her mate and step into the role she'd been born for, not despite her struggles but because of them. Chapter 8. Wisdom Wears No Claws. The strategy trial began at dawn. Unlike the combat arena, this challenge took place in the council chamber, where a massive map had been laid out across the central table. It depicted a fictional territory, mountains, rivers, forests, and 3 pack settlements marked with colored stones. The scenario, Georgina explained as the crowd gathered, is as follows. You are Luna of the central pack marked in blue. Your territory is being threatened by two neighboring packs, red to the north, green to the south. Both claim your pack has violated border agreements. Your alpha is away negotiating with the Council of Alphas and cannot return for 3 days. You have limited warriors, dwindling resources, and intelligence suggesting one or both rival packs may attack within 48 hours. What do? Maricela and Amparo stood on opposite sides of the table, each given 20 minutes to formulate their strategy. They would present to the judges, who would evaluate based on tactical soundness, creativity, and likelihood of success. Begin, Georgina commanded. Amparo studied the map intently, her newly awakened wolf lending her enhanced senses that made patterns easier to see. The river system caught her attention first. It flowed from the mountains through all 3 territories, providing crucial water access. She noticed troop positions, resource markers, terrain advantages, but more importantly, she noticed what wasn't on the map: trade routes, family connections between packs, historical alliances, or grievances. Strategy wasn't just about military positioning. It was about understanding what people wanted, what they feared, and finding solutions that addressed underlying needs rather than surface conflicts. 20 minutes passed quickly. Maricela went first. My strategy is straightforward, she began, pointing to various locations on the map. I would fortify our borders here and here, positioning our strongest warriors at likely attack points. Simultaneously, I'd send scouts to gather intelligence on enemy troop movements. If either pack attacks, we respond with overwhelming force, hit them hard enough that they think twice about challenging us again. Fear is a powerful deterrent. And if both packs attack simultaneously? Alpha Dante asked. We focus our forces on whichever threat is more immediate, then pivot to address the second. It's risky, but with proper coordination, manageable. What about long-term consequences? Gregory interjected. After you've demonstrated overwhelming force, how do you rebuild diplomatic relations? Maricela hesitated. That would be the Alpha's concern when he returns. My responsibility as Luna in his absence is to protect the pack, not worry about future politics. Georgina made notes, her expression neutral. Amparo Davila, your strategy? Amparo stepped forward, her fingers tracing the river system on the map. The core issue isn't actually about border violations, she began. Look at the positioning. Both rival packs have limited water access during dry season. The river flows through our territory before reaching theirs. They're not preparing for war over borders. They're preparing for war over resources they fear they'll lose. She moved colored stones representing diplomatic envoys. First, I'd send immediate messages to both rival packs, not threats, but invitations to emergency council. I'd propose a water-sharing agreement that guarantees their access regardless of seasonal changes. This addresses their actual concern. And if they refuse? Dante asked. Then I know their true motivation isn't resources but conquest. And I can prepare accordingly. But most territorial disputes have underlying practical causes. Address those, and the military threat often dissolves. She repositioned warrior markers. While waiting for responses, I'd station warriors defensively, not at borders, but protecting our central settlement and resource stores. This shows strength without aggression. Defensive positioning leaves borders vulnerable. Maricela interjected. It also doesn't escalate tensions, Amparo countered. If I mass warriors at the border, rival packs interpret that as preparation for attack, which encourages them to strike first. Defensive positioning says we'll protect what's ours, but we're not looking for a fight. And if diplomacy fails and they attack anyway? Gregory's question was testing, his expression carefully neutral in his judge role. Then I've already positioned warriors to protect what matters most, our people and resources. Borders can be renegotiated. Dead pack members cannot. Amparo met his eyes directly. Aluna's first responsibility is to her pack's survival, not her pack's pride. Sometimes that means choosing diplomacy over dominance. Georgina consulted with the other judges, their discussion lasting several minutes. Finally, she announced, both strategies have merit. Maricela Kidd's approach is traditional, militarily sound, and would likely prevent immediate attack. However, it fails to address root causes and would likely result in long-term instability. Maricela's face tightened, but she said nothing. Amparo Davila's approach is unconventional, but demonstrates deeper strategic thinking. She identified the true source of conflict and proposed solutions that address both immediate security and long-term stability. The judges award the strategy trial to Amparo Davila. The crowd's reaction was mixed, some approving, others muttering that real leadership required strength, not negotiation. But Amparo caught Ramon's eye across the room, and the old warrior gave her a subtle nod of approval. 2 trials 1. 3 to go. The healing trial took place that afternoon in the infirmary. 5 patients had been prepared, each with different injuries ranging from minor cuts to a simulated poisoning requiring precise diagnosis and treatment. The challenge was simple: heal all 5 patients successfully within 1 hour. Judges would evaluate speed, accuracy, and bedside manner. This was Amparo's domain, the place where she'd always felt confident, capable, valuable. But Maricela had surprised everyone by revealing she'd trained as a battlefield medic before focusing on combat. She wasn't helpless in the healing arts. "Begin," Georgina announced. Amparo moved with practiced efficiency, assessing each patient quickly. The key was prioritizing who needed immediate intervention versus who could wait a few minutes. Patient 3, the simulated poisoning case, was most critical. Then patient 5 with the deep laceration. The others could be treated after stabilizing those 2. Across the infirmary, Maricela worked quickly but less systematically, treating patients in order, rather than by priority, a mistake that would cost her time. Amparo identified the poison as silver fever, the same infection that had nearly killed little Neva. She prepared the purification bath from memory, her hands steady as she worked. While that patient soaked, she moved to the laceration, cleaning and stitching with precision that came from years of practice. Patient after patient, she worked through the challenges. Each one received not just medical treatment, but also comfort, a gentle word, a reassuring touch, the kind of bedside manner that separated adequate healers from exceptional ones. Maricela finished first, stepping back with a triumphant expression, but Amparo noticed she'd missed something. Patient 2's minor wound showed early signs of infection that would become serious if untreated. An easy mistake if you were rushing. Amparo took an extra 5 minutes to properly clean and dress patient 2's wound, adding preventative herbs that would stop infection before it started. Only then did she step back. "Time," Georgina called. The judges examined both healers' work carefully. Maricela's treatments were adequate, but rushed, competent battlefield medicine that prioritized speed over thoroughness. Amparo's treatments were meticulous, addressing not just immediate injuries but potential complications. Maricela Kidd demonstrated solid healing fundamentals, Georgina announced. Her treatments would keep patients alive in combat situations. However, she missed early signs of infection in patient 2 and treated patients in sequence rather than by priority. Maricela's confident expression faltered. Amparo Davila demonstrated master-level healing knowledge. She correctly prioritized critical patients, identified a complex poisoning, and prevented future complications through thorough treatment. The judges award the healing trial to Amparo Davila, 3 trials 1. But as the crowd dispersed, Amparo noticed Maricela's expression no longer confident or superior, but desperate. A cornered animal was the most dangerous kind. That evening, Gregory found Amparo in her cottage, reviewing notes for the next day's diplomacy trial. 3 victories, he said, pulling her into his arms. "You're magnificent. 2 more trials to go. Maricela won't give up easily." "No, but she's losing. Everyone can see it." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You've proven yourself beyond any doubt, Amparo. White wolf or not, you're extraordinary. I keep waiting for something to go wrong," she admitted. "For this to be revealed as a dream or a trick. Or, it's real." His arms tightened around her. "You're real. Your strength, your intelligence, your wolf, all real, and all mine." The possessive note in his voice made her smile. "Presumptuous, considering I haven't officially accepted you yet, haven't you?" He nipped at her neck, making her gasp. "You already wear my mark here," he traced where he'd kissed her. "And here," his hand pressed over her heart. "The formal claiming is just ceremony. You've been mine since the moment the mate bond snapped into place." "And you've been mine," she countered, pulling him down for a kiss that quickly deepened into something heated. They were interrupted by urgent knocking. Bonita's voice came through the door. Amparo. Emergency at the eastern border. Rogue pack, at least 20 of them. Gregory pulled away with a muttered curse. I have to go. Alpha Dante will need Shadowmere warriors. I'm coming too, Amparo said, already grabbing her medical bag. Absolutely not. You have trials tomorrow. I have pack members who might be injured tonight. She met his eyes, her white wolf rising close to the surface. I'm a healer, Gregory. This is what I do. He looked ready to argue, then sighed. Stay behind the front lines. Please. I can't focus on fighting if I'm worried about you. They reached the eastern border to find chaos. 20 rogues had indeed attacked, organized, aggressive, clearly coordinated rather than the desperate, starving wolves from before. This was an invasion force. Warriors engaged them in fierce combat, the sounds of snarling and yelping filling the night. Already, 3 Clearwater wolves were down, bleeding from various wounds. Amparo shifted to her white wolf form, the transformation coming easier each time, and used her enhanced speed to reach the injured warriors. She shifted back to treat them, her hands working quickly to stabilize wounds while the battle raged around her. Behind you! Gregory's warning came through the mate bond, just as a rogue broke through the lines, charging directly at Amparo. She shifted mid-turn, her white wolf meeting the rogue head-on. The fight was brief. Her legendary bloodline gave her strength that the half-starved rogue couldn't match. She pinned him quickly, not killing but incapacitating, then shifted back to continue healing. The battle lasted an hour. When it was over, 15 rogues lay dead or captured. 5 had fled, and 8 Clearwater warriors were injured, but all would survive, thanks to Amparo's immediate medical intervention. You saved them, Ramon said, his weathered face split in a rare smile. Every single warrior who went down tonight survived because you were here. But Amparo was staring at something else: the rogues' organization, their coordinated attack patterns. The fact that they'd specifically targeted the eastern border where defenses were weakest. This wasn't random, she said slowly. Someone planned this. Someone who knows our territory, our patrol patterns, our vulnerabilities. Who? Gregory demanded, his alpha authority bleeding through. I don't know. But whoever it is, they're not finished. She looked at the captured rogues. We need to question them. Find out who hired them and why. Alpha Dante nodded grimly. We'll start interrogations immediately. Gregory, your warriors will bolster our patrols tonight. If there's another attack, I want to be ready. As the Alphas organized defenses, Amparo continued treating injured warriors. It was nearly dawn before she finished, exhaustion pulling at her like a physical weight. Gregory found her washing blood from her hands in the infirmary. You need rest. The diplomacy trial is in 4 hours. I'll be fine, Amparo. I said I'll be fine. She dried her hands, turning to face him. This is what being Luna means, isn't it? Healing the injured, fighting when necessary, going without sleep when your pack needs you. I'm not going to fail these last 2 trials just because I'm tired. He cupped her face gently. You won't fail. You couldn't fail if you tried. But I'm allowed to worry about my mate pushing herself too hard. Your mate is stronger than you think. I know exactly how strong you are. He kissed her forehead. Which is why I know you'll be brilliant tomorrow, exhausted or not. But please try to rest for at least an hour before the trial. For me? She relented, letting him guide her to the recovery cot in the back room. He lay down beside her, his arms wrapped protectively around her, and within minutes, she was asleep. She dreamed of white wolves and shadowy figures, of attacks coordinated by an unseen enemy, of trials yet to come and challenges still ahead. When she woke an hour later, Gregory was watching her with an expression of such tender devotion it made her breath catch. What? She asked. Just memorizing this moment. My white wolf Luna, fierce and brilliant and finally mine. The trials aren't over yet. They will be soon. And then no one will ever question your right to stand beside me. He helped her sit up. Come on. Let's show them what you're capable of. The diplomacy trial awaited, and with it, whatever schemes Maricela had planned for her last chances at victory. But Amparo was ready. She'd been ready her whole life. Chapter 9. When sabotage meets justice. The diplomacy trial was held in neutral territory. a clearing between Clearwater and Shadowmere lands where pack representatives could meet without either side having home advantage. The scenario was complex. 2 feuding packs, both with legitimate grievances, both prepared to go to war. As potential Luna, each challenger would play mediator, with actors portraying the feuding alphas. Success would be measured by whether they could broker peace. And if so, how lasting that peace would likely be. Amparo watched as Maricela went first, facing actors portraying Alpha Paris Ortiz of Riverside Pack and Alpha Geraldo Jefferson of Crestwood Pack. My pack's hunting grounds have been violated repeatedly. Paris snarled, his performance convincing. Crestwood warriors cross our borders with impunity. Because your pack poaches our game before it reaches our territory, Geraldo countered. Our wolves are starving while Riverside feasts. Maricela's approach was direct. She proposed splitting the disputed territory down the middle, establishing clear borders, and imposing penalties for violations. It was fair, practical, and completely missed the underlying dynamics. And what happens in 10 years when game populations shift again? Paris challenged. We're back to the same conflict. Maricela had no answer that satisfied both parties. Her mediation ended with a tense truce that everyone knew wouldn't last past the first harsh winter. Amparo Davila, Georgina called. Amparo stood, facing the actors who reset their angry postures and aggrieved expressions. Before we discuss territories, she began. Tell me about your packs. How many members? How many depend on hunting versus trade? What are your relationships with other neighboring territories? It seemed like a tangent, but she listened carefully as both alphas described their pack situations. Riverside was larger, more prosperous, but struggling with an aging population. Crestwood was smaller, younger, but lacked resources for proper development. I see, Amparo said thoughtfully. So Riverside needs young warriors to bolster their defenses, and Crestwood needs resources and trade connections that Riverside has in abundance. What's your point? Paris asked warily. My point is you need each other more than you need the disputed hunting grounds. She moved to the map laid out between them. What if instead of dividing territory you merged it? Create a shared preserve where both packs hunt together. Riverside gains young warriors through alliance marriages between packs. Crestwood gains access to Riverside's trade networks and resources. You're suggesting we merge? Geraldo sounded shocked. Not merge entirely. Maintain your separate pack identities and leadership structures. But create a formal alliance sealed by blood and treaty. Share resources. Share territory. Share the burden of survival. She met both their eyes. Alone, you're struggling, and likely to weaken further. Together, you become a regional power that other packs will think twice about challenging. That's... Paris trailed off, clearly not expecting such a radical solution. That's unprecedented, Geraldo finished. Packs don't just ally like that. The politics alone are complicated, yes, but less complicated than endless border disputes that drain both your packs while solving nothing. Amparo's voice was firm but kind. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it addresses both your real needs rather than fighting over symptoms of deeper problems. The actors exchanged glances, then nodded the signal that they accepted her proposed solution as viable. The diplomacy trial goes to Amparo Davila, Georgina announced. Her solution demonstrated creative thinking, addressed root causes, and showed understanding of pack dynamics beyond simple territorial disputes. 4 trials won, 1 to go. But as they broke for midday meal before the final wisdom trial, something felt wrong. Amparo couldn't pinpoint it, just an instinct that trouble was brewing. You're nervous, Gregory said, walking beside her. Aren't you? Maricela has lost 4 trials. She's desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. She's bound by the challenge rules. She can't. A scream cut through his words, high-pitched, terrified, coming from the direction of Packlands. They ran, along with dozens of other wolves drawn by the sound of distress. The schoolhouse again, but this time, no rogues. Instead, a group of children huddled inside while smoke poured from a storage building nearby. Fire, someone yelled. The medical supply storage is burning. Amparo's heart dropped. The medical supplies, irreplaceable herbs, medications that took months to cultivate, equipment they couldn't afford to lose. And worse, the fire was spreading toward the main pack buildings. Warriors formed bucket brigades while others tried to create fire breaks. But the blaze was intense, clearly accelerated by something more than accident. This was set deliberately, Ramon said, appearing at Amparo's side. Someone used accelerant. Look at the burn pattern. Who would? She stopped, a terrible suspicion forming. Where's Maricela? I saw her heading toward the council chamber for the final trial, Bonita said breathlessly, arriving with her medical bag. But Amparo, some of those burning supplies are toxic. If the fire reaches them and they combust, the smoke could poison half the pack. Amparo was already moving. Evacuate everyone within 100 yards. Now. She shifted to her white wolf form, using her enhanced strength to help drag burning debris away from the main storage area where the dangerous materials were kept. The heat was intense, even through her thick fur, and smoke choked her lungs. Other wolves joined her, working frantically to contain the blaze. But it was spreading too fast, too hot, clearly designed to cause maximum chaos. And suddenly, Amparo understood. This wasn't random. This was sabotage timed precisely during the final trial to either force her to choose between competing or saving her pack, or to cast suspicion on her if she happened to be near when it started. Maricela, she growled, the sound carrying through her wolf form. Gregory's wolf appeared beside her, golden eyes sharp with understanding. He'd reached the same conclusion. They worked for 30 minutes, fighting the fire with everything they had. Finally, with the help of 24 wolves and a sudden downpour that seemed like divine intervention, they contained the blaze. The damage was extensive. Half the medical supplies destroyed, the storage building a total loss, and 3 pack members suffering from smoke inhalation. The final trial, Alpha Dante said grimly, his fur singed and smoking. We need to reconvene. Not yet, Amparo said, shifting back to human form. First we find out who started this fire. She didn't have to search long. Among the debris, she found a piece of cloth, expensive silk in a distinctive silver-gray color. The same color Maricela had been wearing that morning. Could be coincidence, someone suggested weakly. Or she could have dropped it while setting the fire, Amparo countered. We need to question her, now. They found Maricela in the council chamber, looking freshly washed and completely calm, too calm for someone who should have been covered in soot and ash like everyone else who'd fought the fire. Maricela, kid, Alpha Dante's voice was cold with fury. Did you set the fire at the medical storage building? That's absurd. Maricela's laugh was brittle. Why would I do something so destructive? To sabotage Amparo, Gregory said, his alpha command making several wolves flinch. To force her to choose between competing in the final trial or saving pack members. To make her look bad either way. You have no proof. We have this. Amparo held up the silk cloth. Your distinctive fabric. Found at the fire's origin point. And we have witnesses who saw you leaving the area right before the fire started. That proves nothing. Maricela's composure cracked. You're trying to frame me because you know I might win the final trial. The final trial tests wisdom, Amparo said quietly. And wisdom means knowing when you've already lost. You've been beaten fairly in 4 trials, Maricela. Starting a fire that could have killed children, where's the wisdom in that? I didn't. Maricela stopped, seeing the expressions around her. No one believed her denials. Even her usual supporters looked skeptical. Enough. Georgina stood, her elderly face hard with disappointment. Maricela, kid. The evidence is substantial. More importantly, your behavior throughout these trials has shown a profound lack of the qualities necessary for Luna. You've shown spite instead of grace, destruction instead of protection, pride instead of wisdom. But I didn't lose. You lost the moment you chose sabotage over honor. Georgina's voice was final. I declare Amparo Davila the winner of the 5th trial by default, and the overall victor of the Luna Challenge. Maricela, kid. You are disqualified and subject to pack justice for your crimes. Maricela's face went white. No. No, this isn't I deserve. You deserve exactly what you've earned, Alpha Dante said. Exile from Clearwater Pack, effective immediately. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and leave our territory. If you return, you'll be treated as a rogue. You can't do this, Maricela's voice rose to a shriek. I'm high-ranking my family. Your family is ashamed of you, Bonita spoke up. her voice heavy with sadness. Your mother came to me this morning, concerned about your increasingly erratic behavior. She suspected you were planning something desperate. I'm sorry we didn't intervene sooner. Maricella's composure shattered completely. She looked around the chamber, seeing no sympathy, no support, just disappointment and disgust. This is her fault, she spat, pointing at Amparo. She's a freak, a wolfless nothing who suddenly shifts into some legendary creature. It's not natural. She probably cursed herself. Made a deal with dark forces. Enough. Gregory's command was absolute. You will not speak about my mate with anything but respect. Guards, escort her to her quarters. She has 1 hour. Warriors moved forward, and Maricela finally fell silent, her eyes burning with hatred as she was led away. Amparo should have felt triumphant. She'd won all 5 trials, proven herself beyond any doubt, defeated the challenger who'd tormented her for years. Instead, she just felt tired and sad. The trials are concluded, Georgina announced formally. Amparo Davila has proven herself worthy in combat, strategy, healing, diplomacy, and wisdom. She is fit to be Luna of any pack, including Shadowmere. Gregory Conrad, do you accept her as your mate? And Luna, I do. Gregory's voice rang out clear and strong, not just because she won these trials, but because I've watched her transform from someone the pack dismissed into someone they'll follow anywhere. Because she's brilliant, brave, and possesses strength that has nothing to do with teeth and claws. He moved to stand before her, taking both her hands in his. Amparo Davila, White Wolf, healer, strategist, and the other half of my soul, will you accept me as your mate? Will you stand beside me as Luna of Shadowmere? And help me lead our pack into a future I couldn't imagine without you? The formal proposal, witnessed by both packs, left no room for doubt or future challenges. This was it, the moment everything had been building toward. I will, Amparo said, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Not because I proved myself in trials, but because you learned to see me. Because you're an alpha who puts his pack first but his mate a very close second. Because I love you, and I believe together we can build something extraordinary. Gregory pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no doubt, just absolute certainty and joy. The mate bond blazed between them, fully acknowledged and accepted by both parties. Amparo felt something click into place deep in her soul, a completeness she'd never experienced, like finding a part of herself she hadn't known was missing. I claim you, Gregory murmured against her lips. Before the moon goddess, before both our packs, before the world. You are mine, and I am yours, from this day until our last breath. I claim you, Amparo echoed. My mate, my alpha, my partner in all things, yours and yours alone. The formal claiming complete. Both packs erupted in celebration, howls and cheers filling the air. Even wolves who doubted her were swept up in the moment, recognizing that they'd just witnessed something historic. A white wolf Luna for Shadowmere pack. A healer who'd proven herself as fierce as any warrior. A story that would be told for generations. But as the celebration continued around them, Amparo caught sight of something at the edge of the clearing. A figure watching from the shadows, too distant to identify clearly. The same figure, she realized with chilling certainty, who'd orchestrated the rogue attacks. Who'd hired hunters to test Clearwater's defenses. Who'd used Maricella's desperation to cause chaos. Someone was playing a longer game, and the trials had only been the opening moves. Gregory, she murmured against his chest. We have a problem. Can it wait until after we celebrate our mating? His voice was warm with humor and desire. I don't think so. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. The attacks. The fire. Maricela wasn't smart enough to coordinate all this alone. Someone has been manipulating events, testing our defenses, trying to weaken both our packs. His expression shifted immediately, alpha instincts taking over. Who? I don't know yet, but whoever it is, they're watching us right now. She gestured toward the tree line where the shadow had been, but it had vanished. Only the sense of being observed remained, a prickling awareness that made her white wolf growl low in warning. Then we deal with them, Gregory said firmly. Together. As mates. As alphas. I'm not alpha. You're my Luna. That makes you alpha in all but name. He pulled her close again. Whatever threats are coming, We'll face them as equals. That's what true mates do. Amparo leaned into his strength, feeling her wolf settle contentedly. The unknown enemy was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight was for celebration, for claiming her mate fully, for beginning the life she'd fought so hard to earn. But even as she let Gregory lead her toward the celebration feast, she couldn't shake the feeling that their real trials were only just beginning. The mate bond was claimed. Her position as Luna was secured. Now came the part her grandmother's journal had warned about in the passages she hadn't shared, the part about white wolves attracting danger like moths to flame, about being tested not for personal worth but for the survival of everyone they loved. She glanced back at the tree line one more time, her silver eyes catching moonlight. "Let them come," her wolf growled. "We're ready." And for the first time in her life, Amparo truly believed it. Chapter 10. The True Enemy Revealed. The celebration lasted deep into the night. Both packs mingled freely, Clearwater and Shadowmere wolves sharing food, stories, and the joy of witnessing a legendary mating. Amparo found herself surrounded by well-wishers, many of whom had ignored her mere weeks ago. To the white wolf Luna, someone toasted, and the crowd echoed the sentiment with raised cups and howls. Gregory never left her side, his hand constantly at her waist or tangled with hers, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Through the mate bond, Amparo felt his contentment, his pride, his bone-deep satisfaction at finally claiming what was his. But she also felt his underlying tension. He'd noticed the Watcher too, and like her, he knew their troubles were far from over. "We should talk to the captured rogues," Amparo said quietly during a brief moment of relative privacy, "before the trail goes cold." "Tonight? On our mating celebration?" Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Would you rather wait until whoever hired them makes their next move?" He sighed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You're right, of course. But after this, I'm taking you back to our den, and not letting you leave for at least 2 days. Our den. Did you think you'd stay in that tiny cottage now that you're Luna of Shadowmere?" His smile was warm. "I've already arranged for your belongings to be moved to my quarters, unless you'd prefer separate sleeping arrangements. Not even slightly." She stretched up to kiss him properly, drawing appreciative hoots from nearby pack members. But first the rogues. They found Alpha Dante already in the holding cells, interrogating the captured rogues from the eastern border attack. Ramon stood guard, his expression grim. "Any progress?" Gregory asked. "Some." Dante gestured to one of the rogues, a scarred male who looked more defeated than defiant. "This one's been more talkative than the others. Tell them what you told me." The rogue's eyes flicked to Amparo, widening slightly at the sight of her. "You're the white wolf. The one they said couldn't exist anymore." "Who said?" Amparo demanded. "Our employer. Said the bloodline was extinct, that if we found evidence otherwise, the payment would double." He laughed bitterly. "Guess we found that evidence. Not that it matters now. Who hired you?" Gregory's alpha command made the rogue flinch. "Don't know his name. None of us did. He met us in neutral territory, paid half up front, promised the rest after we completed the job." The rogue shifted uncomfortably in his chains. "We were supposed to test Clearwater's defenses, cause casualties, make it look random. But the real target was always her." He nodded toward Amparo. Ice ran down her spine. "Me specifically?" "Not at first. The job was just harassment, weakening the pack before the alliance with Shadowmere could solidify. But then word spread about you, the wolfless healer who might be Gregory Conrad's mate. That's when our employer got real interested. Started asking questions about you, offering bonuses if we could capture you alive." "Did you see this employer?" Dante asked. "Anything identifying about him?" "Tall, well-dressed, moved like a warrior but talked like nobility. Had this ring silver, with some kind of crest. 3 mountains and a wolf." The rogue shrugged. "That's all I remember. He paid well, didn't ask unnecessary questions. Perfect employer for rogues looking for work." Gregory and Amparo exchanged glances. The description was vague, but the ring wasn't. She'd seen that crest before, in historical texts about pack territories. "The Highlands Pack," she said slowly. 3 mountains and a wolf. That's their traditional crest. "Highlands?" Dante frowned. "They're allied with us, have been for decades. Why would they?" Unless the alliance is less solid than we thought, Gregory interrupted. Or unless someone from Highlands has a personal agenda that doesn't align with their alpha's politics. There's more, the rogue continued. Our employer mentioned something about the old bloodlines, how they needed to be controlled or eliminated. Said too much power concentrated in one place was dangerous, that the white wolves especially couldn't be allowed to rise again. He looked at Amparo with something almost like pity. He seemed to think you were a threat that needed handling. A threat to what? Amparo asked, though dread was already forming in her gut. To the balance of power. To the established order. To people who've spent generations making sure certain bloodlines stayed extinct. The rogue's chains rattled as he leaned forward. Lady, you being alive and mated to one of the most powerful alphas in the territories? That scares people. People with resources and connections and willingness to do whatever it takes to maintain control. Before anyone could respond, urgent footsteps echoed down the corridor. Bonita appeared, her face pale with worry. Amparo, you need to come quickly. It's little Neva, the girl from the rogue attack weeks ago. Her wound reopened, and there's something wrong. Something I've never seen before. They ran to the infirmary, Gregory keeping pace effortlessly. Neva lay on an examination table, her mother hovering nearby with tears streaming down her face. The girl's previously healed bite wound had indeed reopened, but worse. Black veins were spreading from it, creeping up her arm like poison. Silver fever? Gregory suggested. No. Amparo examined the wound carefully, her healer's training warring with the sick certainty growing in her chest. This is something else. Something deliberate. She smelled the wound beneath the scent of infection was something sharp, artificial. Not natural poison but manufactured. Those rogues, she said slowly. They weren't just starving and desperate. Someone treated their claws and teeth with a delayed action toxin, something that would activate weeks after the initial bite, making it look like natural infection rather than deliberate poisoning. Can you treat it? Neva's mother asked desperately. I don't know. I've never seen this compound before. Amparo's mind raced through every poison, every toxin, every treatment she'd ever studied. But white wolves are supposed to have enhanced healing abilities, not just for themselves but for others. Maybe. She let her wolf rise close to the surface, not shifting but letting the power flow through her human hands. They began to glow faintly silver, a manifestation of the legendary white wolf healing that most modern wolves thought was myth. She placed her glowing hands on Neva's arm, focusing everything she had on drawing out the poison, neutralizing the toxin, healing the damage at a cellular level. It was instinctive, guided by her wolf's ancient knowledge rather than her medical training. The black veins began to recede. Slowly at first, then faster as Amparo found the rhythm of the healing. 5 minutes later, Neva's arm was clean, no infection, no poison, not even a scar from the reopened wound. The little girl's eyes fluttered open. Miss Amparo? What happened? You're going to be fine, sweetheart. Amparo's hands stopped glowing as she pulled back, exhaustion washing over her. But we need to check every wolf who was bitten in that attack. If they all have dormant poison. We're running out of time, Gregory finished. Whoever planned this wanted to cause a plague, weaken the pack from within. They spent the next 4 hours examining every wolf who'd been injured in recent rogue attacks. 8 had the same delayed toxin in their systems. Amparo healed each one, her white wolf's power growing stronger and more confident with each success. By dawn, she was exhausted but triumphant. Every poisoned wolf was clean, the threat neutralized. You saved them, Dante said, wonder in his voice. All of them. The legends about white wolf healing were true, which means the legends about why they were targeted for extinction might also be true, Amparo said grimly. She turned to Gregory. We need to go to Highland's pack. Confront whoever is behind this. Not without an army, Gregory countered. If they're willing to poison children and hire assassins, they won't hesitate to attack a Luna who walks into their territory. Then we bring an army. Amparo's silver eyes flashed with determination. Gather both packs. We're ending this now. The journey to Highland's territory took 2 days of hard travel. 50 warriors from Shadowmere and 30 from Clearwater, an intimidating force that sent a clear message. This wasn't a diplomatic visit. This was a reckoning. Highland's Alpha Rudolph Roberts met them at the border with his own warriors, his expression wary. Gregory Conrad, Alpha Dante, This is unexpected. His eyes landed on Amparo, and something flickered in his expression. And you brought the white wolf. How? Interesting. We need to talk, Gregory said, his voice carrying barely contained fury. About rogue attacks, poisoned weapons, and someone from your pack trying to assassinate my mate. Rudolph's surprise appeared genuine. I know nothing of this. My pack is allied with Clearwater. Your pack, perhaps. But what about your beta? Amparo stepped forward, her wolf rising close to the surface. She'd spent the journey reviewing everything she knew about Highlands Pack's leadership structure. Denver Schmidt. Your beta for the past 15 years. The same Denver Schmidt whose great-grandfather led the campaign to eliminate the White Wolf bloodline a century ago. Rudolph's face paled. Denver is? He's been acting strangely lately. Secretive. But I never thought what, that he'd continue his ancestors' mission? Amparo's voice was hard. That he'd see a White Wolf's emergence as a threat to the power structure his family helped establish. That he'd use rogues and poison and sabotage to eliminate me before I could become too strong. Bring me Denver Schmidt, Rudolph commanded his warriors. Now. But Denver was already there, emerging from the crowd of Highlands wolves with a smile that held no warmth. No need to summon me, Alpha. I'm right here. His eyes fixed on Amparo with open hatred. Though I'm disappointed you figured it out so quickly. I'd hoped for a few more months to properly prepare. Prepare for what? Gregory demanded. For eliminating the threat your mate represents. Denver's hand moved to his weapon. White wolves nearly destroyed the established pack structure once before. They were too powerful, too popular, threatened to upset the careful balance we'd built. My great-grandfather understood that some bloodlines are too dangerous to be allowed to continue. So you tried to kill her? Rudolph's voice was shocked. Betray our allies? Start a war? I tried to prevent a war. Denver's voice rose. Don't you understand? She's not just a white wolf. She's a white wolf mated to one of the most powerful alphas alive. Their children would be unstoppable. In 2 generations, they'd control half the territories through bloodline alone. Every other pack would be subordinate. Every other alpha made irrelevant. That's not, Amparo started. Isn't it? Denver's laugh was bitter. The White Wolves always claimed they wanted peace, wanted to help, but power corrupts, Luna. Eventually you'd realize you could rule rather than serve, and by then, it would be too late to stop you. So your solution was to poison children? To hire assassins? To commit atrocities in the name of preventing hypothetical future ones? Gregory's wolf was fully present in his voice now, making every wolf within earshot instinctively submit. You've become the monster you claim to fear. I've become pragmatic. Denver drew his weapon, a silver blade etched with symbols meant to harm supernatural creatures. And I'm prepared to finish what my great-grandfather started. Your mate dies today, Conrad. For the good of all packs. He lunged. But he'd underestimated several things. First, that Gregory would be fast enough to intercept, putting himself between the blade and his mate. Second, that Amparo's newly awakened wolf would react with speed that matched her legendary bloodline. Third, that 50 loyal warriors would immediately move to protect their Luna. The blade meant for Amparo's heart instead, sliced across Gregory's shoulder a glancing blow that drew blood but missed anything vital. Before Denver could strike again, Amparo shifted, her white wolf form towering over him with silver eyes blazing. You want to eliminate my bloodline? Her wolf's voice resonated with ancient power, audible to every shifted wolf present. Then face what you fear. Face a white wolf at full strength, and see if your prejudice can defeat centuries of refined power. Denver tried to shift, to meet her wolf with his own, but fear made him clumsy. Amparo pinned him before his transformation completed, her jaws closing gently around his throat, not biting, just holding, showing mercy he hadn't planned to show her. I could kill you, she thought toward him, knowing he'd hear. I could end your bloodline the way you tried to end mine. But that would make me the monster you claim I am. So, instead, I'll show you what white wolves actually stand for. She released him and shifted back to human form, standing over his cowering wolf with dignity that made several Highlands wolves drop their heads in respect. Denver Schmidt, you're guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy, use of illegal poisons, and betraying your Alpha's alliance. Her voice carried across the gathered wolves. The punishment for any one of those crimes is death. But I won't kill you. Instead, you'll be exiled as rogues, stripped of pack, stripped of status, left to survive on your own. Maybe then, you'll understand that power without mercy is just tyranny in another form." Rudolph stepped forward, his face hard with anger and shame. "I second Luna Amparo's judgment. Denver Schmidt, you are cast out from Highland's pack. Leave now, or face execution for your crimes." Denver shifted back to human form, his face twisted with rage and defeat. "You'll regret this. All of you. When she shows her true nature, when she turns on you." "Enough." Gregory's alpha command silenced him mid-rant. "You had your chance to speak. Now go, before I decide mercy is overrated." Denver fled, and Amparo watched him disappear into the wilderness with mixed feelings. Part of her wanted justice, wanted him punished more severely for everything he'd done. But another part, the part that remembered being dismissed, rejected, cast aside, understood that exile was sometimes worse than death. Rudolph approached her, his head slightly bowed. "Luna Amparo, I apologize for my beta's actions. If I had known—" "You couldn't have known. People hide their darkness well." She met his eyes. "But Highland's pack needs to examine why this hatred festered unnoticed. Denver's family has held grudges for a century. That kind of poison doesn't grow in isolation." "You're right." Rudolph's voice was heavy. "We have work to do, rooting out old prejudices and rebuilding trust. I hope you'll give us that chance." "I will. But understand, if any other threats emerge from your territory, if anyone else tries to target me or my family, the response will be less merciful." Her silver eyes held his. "I've proven I can be kind. Don't force me to prove I can also be dangerous." "Understood, Luna." The gathering dispersed, tensions easing now that the true enemy had been revealed and dealt with. Gregory's shoulder wound had already begun healing, his supernatural recovery closing the cut within minutes. "That was well done," he said quietly, pulling her close. "Mercy, for someone who showed you none. That takes strength. Most alphas never develop. I had good teachers." She leaned into him, exhaustion catching up now that the adrenaline was fading. "You, showing me that power can be gentle. Bonita, teaching me that healing includes forgiving. My grandmother, leaving me journals about a bloodline that valued wisdom over warfare. And yourself," he added. "Don't forget you chose mercy. No one forced it. That decision was yours alone." They began the journey home, this time with celebrations rather than grim determination coloring the mood. Warriors shared stories, packs mingled freely, and Amparo found herself at the center of a community that finally, truly accepted her. 3 months later, Amparo stood in the great hall of Shadowmere Pack, watching as Gregory addressed their warriors about the spring planting season. She'd learned so much in those months: how to lead warriors who initially doubted her, how to balance her healing duties with Luna responsibilities, how to navigate pack politics with Gregory as her partner rather than her judge. Shadowmere had accepted her more readily than she'd expected. Her white wolf status helped, but it was her actions that truly won them over, healing injured warriors, negotiating better terms with trading partners, standing firm against threats, without resorting to unnecessary violence. "Luna," a young warrior approached nervously. "There's a pregnant wolf in the village struggling with a difficult labor. Bonita sent word asking if you could come." Amparo was moving before he finished speaking. She might be Luna now, but she'd always be a healer first. That would never change. She found the laboring wolf, Christine Callahan, a young mother expecting her first child in distress. Bonita was already there, but looked relieved when Amparo entered. "The pup is breech," Bonita said quietly. "I can't turn it manually without risking injury to both mother and child." Amparo let her white wolf's healing power flow through her hands, using it to sense the pup's position, gently guide it into proper alignment without physical manipulation. 20 minutes later, a healthy baby boy entered the world, squalling and perfect. "Thank you, Luna," Christine gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Just doing what I do best," Amparo replied with a smile. She returned to the great hall to find Gregory waiting, his golden eyes warm with pride as he felt her contentment through the mate bond. "Another successful healing?" he asked. "A healthy pup and mother. Yes. She moved into his arms, feeling complete in a way she'd never imagined possible months ago. This is what I was meant for, Gregory. Not just being your mate, but healing, helping, making a difference. I know. He kissed her forehead. And I love you for it. My fierce, compassionate, absolutely extraordinary Luna. I love you too. She looked up at him, seeing her future in his eyes. Though I should warn you, I think our pup will be arriving sooner than expected. Gregory froze. Our, what? Pup, baby. Future Alpha or Luna of Shadowmere Pack. She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. I suspected for a few weeks, but Benita confirmed it this morning. We're going to be parents. The joy that exploded through the mate bond nearly knocked her off her feet. Gregory lifted her, spinning her around while laughing with pure delight. A pup. We're having a pup. He set her down gently, suddenly treating her like she was made of glass. Should you be healing patients? Should you be standing? Do you need to sit? Are you hungry? I'm fine, you ridiculous Alpha. But she was laughing too, caught up in his excitement. Pregnancy isn't an illness. I plan to keep healing, keep working, keep being Luna, right up until the day I give birth. But what if? No what ifs. We're going to do this together, like everything else. Be parents, be alphas, be partners. She pulled him close, resting her forehead against his. Besides, with white wolf blood and your legendary strength, this pup is going to be absolutely unstoppable. Like their mother, Gregory murmured. And their father. That night, they announced the pregnancy to Shadowmere Pack. The celebration rivaled their mating ceremony howls of joy, toasts to the future heir, pack members already arguing about what gifts to make for the pup. Amparo stood beside Gregory on the raised platform, looking out at the pack that had become her family. A year ago, she'd been nobody, the wolfless healer, invisible and dismissed. Now she was Luna, mate and mother-to-be, a white wolf who'd defied extinction, who'd proven that worth wasn't measured by supernatural abilities alone, who'd become the leader she'd always been meant to be. Thank you, she whispered to Gregory during a quiet moment between toasts. For what? For seeing me. Really seeing me. Even when I couldn't shift. Even when everyone else looked past me. For giving me a chance to prove myself. She squeezed his hand. For loving me enough to change your mind. I should thank you, he countered. For being patient, while I figured out what should have been obvious from the start, that the moon goddess knew exactly what she was doing when she made us mates. You're not just worthy of being Luna, Amparo. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. He kissed her in front of the entire pack, and the howls of approval shook the rafters. Later that night, alone in their den, Amparo pulled out her grandmother's journal one final time. She'd read it cover to cover now, every entry about white wolves and their purpose. They are born in times of darkness, one passage read, to bring light, to heal what is broken, unite what is divided, and remind all wolves that strength comes in many forms. The white wolf's greatest power is not their combat prowess or healing abilities, it is their capacity to inspire others to be better than they believe they can be. Did I inspire anyone, grandmother? Amparo whispered to the memory. Did I do what you hoped I would? As if in answer, she felt her pup move just the faintest flutter, but unmistakable. New life, new hope, new possibilities. And through the walls she could hear her pack celebrating, unified, stronger together than they ever could be apart. Yes, she decided. She'd done exactly what her grandmother had hoped. She'd proven that being different wasn't the same as being broken, that patience and persistence could overcome any obstacle, that love, true mate bond love, was worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible, and that sometimes, the wolfless outcast becomes the legendary Luna, exactly as the moon goddess intended. Dear viewers, as we reach the end of Amparo's incredible journey from invisible outcast to legendary Luna, I want to leave you with something to think about. How many times have you dimmed your own light because someone else couldn't see your worth? How many dreams have you abandoned because the world told you that you were fundamentally lacking something essential? Amparo spent 23 years believing she was broken, simply because she didn't fit the mold others expected. But her worth was never defined by what she lacked. It was always present in her intelligence, her compassion, her unwavering determination to keep fighting even when everyone dismissed her. Here's my question for you. What would you do if you discovered that the very thing you thought made you less than was actually preparing you for something greater than you ever imagined? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt like Amparo overlooked, underestimated, told you weren't enough? How did you prove them wrong? Or are you still fighting that battle? Your story matters, and I'd love to hear it. And if Amparo's transformation from wolfless healer to white wolf Luna moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that your worth isn't determined by other people's limited vision, please hit that like button. It helps stories like these reach others who need to hear that being different isn't the same as being broken. Remember, your wolf is waiting, your moment is coming, and when it arrives, you'll understand that everything you endured was preparing you to become exactly who you were always meant to be. Thank you for witnessing Amparo's journey. Until the next story, keep fighting for your worth because you are legendary, even if you don't know it yet.